The game, people are like shocked by like the difficulty.
Oh, of Dragon Quest Monsters.
Mm-hmm. So like, how on earth is this a 1-star boss?
Dude, I
That's one
walked
of
up
the
to
DLC.
one of the Cyclops enemies and fucking
beetle! Get out of here! Oh yeah, don't touch the Cyclopses. Anytime you see a monster that's like 6 times bigger than you, just steer clear. Fucking beetle! Fuck! Got him.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Gaming Effect. We're here with episode 13, the lucky number. I am your co-host, Alex, aka Soldier First Class.
I am Corey, aka Dookie03.
Hey, you actually remembered your name this time.
I've been practicing.
Like the last 4 episodes, you've been like, yeah, my name's Corey, aka... Oh yeah, Dookie03, yeah. So anyway, guys, we're here with episode 13. We are going to be talking about a few things. One being the Dark Souls effect on gaming. And Dragon Quest Monsters. The Dragon Quest Monsters 3, The Dark Prince just released, and so we're going to be talking about that a little bit. But don't forget, guys, we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and SoundCloud. I know a lot of people aren't really using SoundCloud. I will keep uploading there until probably the license runs out, and then I'll probably stop uploading there because we're not really generating any traffic there, and the traffic we are generating is bots. So, yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot of traction is going on SoundCloud, so we're probably just going to skip uploading there after my license runs out. But other than that, thank you guys for all the plays. We're up over 500, as we talked about a little bit last time. Don't forget to rate and share. That really helps get the podcast out there and helps get people listening. And the more people listening, the happier we are. I don't really know.
The bigger our dicks.
Yeah. I don't really know where I was going with that, but just share the podcast, you know? Be a bro.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring. But anyway, so we're going to get right into it. But before we get into it, I have a little bit of a funny story tonight. So I was struggling with my internet downstairs. Last night, I was playing my PS5, and all of a sudden, it said my LAN cable was disconnected. And I'm like, well, that's weird. So I check it. It's plugged in all the way. I unplug it from the wall, and I plug it back in. I go upstairs. I look at my router. It looks like it's plugged in, but I'm not really sure what's going on. So I'm like, okay, what the fuck's going on? Then I realized my TV was no longer hardwired in. So I checked that, not working. Wasn't sure what was going on. So today, I got home from going out of town, and everything still wasn't working down here. My PC somehow was still connected, which I thought was weird, but for whatever reason, my TV and my PS5 were not working. So I'm like, okay, what the fuck? So I did all this troubleshooting. I went through all the settings on both things, and I'm like, okay, maybe Sony released an update that kind of messed with the internet settings or whatever, because my TV is a Sony, and so is obviously my PS5.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, maybe it's a Sony thing. Well, I went through, everything was updated, everything was good. I looked it up online. Nobody was reporting any problems with Sony hardware, so I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I got the boomer idea to unplug my internet cords from my devices, swap them around. So I took my PC's cord and I put it in my TV. Took my TV's cord, put it in my PS5. Took my PS5's cord and put it in my PC. Now everything's working and connected.
The fuck?
I know. That's what I fucking said. I was like, I really hope it's not the cable in the wall that's fucked up, because if it is, I have finished the basement, as you can see. So
yeah, I'm
gonna have to drill holes and shit and run new cables, and that's gonna be a bitch.
Punch holes in the drywall.
Yeah, just drink a bunch of Monster and punch holes in the wall. But I'm like,
that's how the electricians do it these days.
Right, you know. But I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Well, then I swapped all the cables, and I was really honestly freaking out because I thought, like, I'm gonna have to fucking drill holes in the wall, like, I'm gonna have to fix this internet somehow. And I don't know what made me think to do it, but I just swapped all the cables around from each device, and for some reason now it's fucking working perfectly. My TV, my PS5, and my PC are all connected. So, hooray! But what the fuck, you know?
Yeah, dude. Like electronics and like computers and stuff like make no fucking sense. Like I don't care like how much you know about computers and stuff. Like it doesn't make sense. Like half the time it doesn't make sense. Like my entire experience with Steam is just like terrible. Like I can't get games to work no matter what. And then I'll get the same game from like GOG, like GOG.com, and it'll work perfectly fine. So it's like
Yeah.
it's not my computer. And my friends are always like, "Oh, it's your computer. Haha, spend $5,000 on get a new computer." Simple as that. And it's like, dude, first of all, I don't play a lot of new PC games, all right? I'm playing like fucking Knights of the Old Republic. I'm playing,
Right.
you know what I mean?
You're
I'm
emulating more than you're
Yeah, I'm
probably
playing like
playing.
old
Yeah.
PS2 era PC games. But even the new ones, like they just won't fucking work if I try and use Steam. And then yeah, I'll get it through GOG and it'll work perfectly fine. So I don't know. I hate Steam, but it's just weird stuff like that. Stuff like that happens all the time with electronics, especially with me, honestly.
Well, it's like when I was playing Final Fantasy 14 hot and heavy. Like I'd been playing for well over 1,500 hours, right? All
Mhm.
of a sudden, like my Control Alt 0 wasn't working for one of
Weird.
my hotkeys, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why is this not working? And then I looked it up, and for some reason, Windows had toggled this option in my keyboard settings to where it was using like a different keyboard language.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, so like for some reason my Control Alt was mapped to something else, but it was only Control Alt 0 that was working. Control Alt 1 through 9 was
All
working
worked.
just fine, but for some reason the Control Alt 0 was not working at all. And it's
That is
because of
fucking weird.
this weird like language change for the keyboard. And it was just something obscure that had never been toggled on before, just all of a sudden randomly got toggled and then it wasn't working.
A lot
So
of times, wow, I just, yeah, I don't know what I was gonna say there. I started the sentence and it just deleted from my brain.
it's that ADHD.
It is, it truly is.
Dude,
Um,
it seems like ever since we talked about in the mental health episode, I feel like I'm noticing more and more shit about myself
oh yeah,
that you talk about with you having ADHD, and I'm like, God damn it, I don't want to be one of those fucking self-diagnosers, but I feel like every time we talk, there's literally something that you say that I'm like, uh-oh.
hey, it's better to know than to not know.
Yeah,
That's all there is to that.
right.
But to spin into a bit of a tangent here,
Which we are want to
add an
do.
extra topic to this week's topic, or episode's topic. This is not a weekly podcast, all right.
Thank God, it'd drive me insane.
Um, what games have you rate? Like speaking of punching through drywall, what games and situations in games made you rage the most out of like any like tell me some gamer rage stories.
I want to say that. Oh man, I snapped a controller in half doing the Chocobo race in Final Fantasy X.
Really? That's like the one that's the one thing other than Blitzball because I'm a Blitzball master. But other than Blitzball, that's like the one thing of all the like little side questy things. That's the one thing I can do really well.
I don't remember what game I was playing when I smashed that VCR outside. Do you,
VCR?
do you remember I told that story on the
No.
we were talking about rage quitting, and I took that VCR outside and beat it with a baseball bat, kind of like Office Space.
Did the bat reverb up into your hand?
Yes, it hurt, by the
Fuck,
way.
that hurts, dude. I did that. So I used to work at Staples like a long time ago. You guys have that down there, right? Like
Yeah.
Staples and stuff. And I was like, we would have to like wreck the stuff to throw it out so people wouldn't just like go in our dumpster and not buy keyboards or whatever,
Right.
And I remember being like, "Fuck yeah!" And I took this keyboard and I slammed it on like a railing, like an arm railing to grab onto thing, and I fucking slammed it. And it was just like, ah, fuck! Like it hurt so bad, like, and it was just instant, man. And I thought it was gonna be so cool. I thought I was just gonna snap it in half, and it was gonna be like so awesome.
Yeah, I accidentally put a hole in the drywall one time throwing a controller.
Yeah, same.
I was playing, I think, NBA 2K or something, and I was playing in a league, and this kid hit a fucking 3 in my face, and it won the game, and I was so pissed. I spiked the fucking controller down into the ground, and it bounced up and like hit my wall, and it fucking put like a perfect, like, the edge of a controller size hole.
You couldn't even, yeah.
And then I told my wife that the dog did it.
Oh.
Not my proudest moment. She found out after I fessed up, but she also she knew beforehand that it wasn't the dog, but she just didn't admit it, because she's like,
that's funny, dude.
She's like, "Are you sure the dog did it?" And I was like, "Yeah, we were playing," and he like
we were playing NBA 2K.
Yeah.
I dunked. I shot a 3-pointer and the dog was down by fucking 2.
So yeah. So there's that.
I've had the games that did it the worst to me, the worst one, and I'll probably never play this game again, was Sonic Unleashed. Like, I'm a pretty big Sonic fan, and the werehog stages in that game were just so fucking terrible. And there's one where I don't know the name of the stage, and there's one where, first of all, I want to preface this by saying the Sonic stages in that game were so good. Like, I loved the Sonic stages. And then the werehog stages all sucked, and it's like half the game sucks, and you're just waiting to beat the shitty stages so you can get to the good ones, right? And there's one where you're up on these like I-beams. I don't know if it's like a construction site or whatever, and you have to, like, you know how like a lot of like 3D platformers will have a part where you have to like, you got to tiptoe across these I-beams. Yeah, it was that, and the game, it just controls like so bad, and it's frustrating. And I think I failed like 15 times. And then finally, that's my go-to as well, by the way, is to spike the controller into the floor as hard as I can. And dude, my fucking R2 button just like shot across the room, and like the controller shell like cracked like horribly. What I did for a while when I was like in primo rage, like I knew I was gonna rage, I would like make sure I had like a pillow in the corner so I could chuck my controller into the pillow.
The worst part,
wreck the controller.
The worst part's when you chuck it into the couch and it bounces off the cushion and fucking
it hits you.
Yeah. You know what's funny? So we're gonna talk about Dark Souls and like Neo and stuff like that a little bit later. But one thing that I will say is that I've played and beaten every single Soulsborne game, from Demon Souls to Bloodborne, Sekiro, all the Souls games, Elden Ring. I just finished Lords of the Fallen. Like, I've played a lot of Souls and Souls-like games, and I've never once broken a controller playing them. You give me like a 2D platformer or something fucking completely innocuous, like a sports game or something like that, and I fucking freak out. And I don't know why I can play these fucking difficult-ass games that punish you super hard for making mistakes and not flip out. But you give me something that's built for 5-year-olds, and I fucking lose my I lose my goddamn shit. And I don't know if it's because it's built for 5-year-olds that I'm like, why is this game so fucking terrible? And then I freak out, and I'm like, because I'm like playing that fucking Super Mario Brothers Wonder, and like that game is clearly like, it's hard, and it's built for people that play platformers. But you can tell that it's meant for, like, I don't know, anybody. 8, 9, 10-year-olds, something like that, right? So you're like, this can't be that rage-inducing. And then, like, I die to the same stupid fucking turtle for the 10th time, and I'm like, fuck this goddamn game! But I'm playing on my Switch, so I'm like, I don't want to throw the Switch.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like, if I'm playing on the TV with the Switch, I think about throwing the controller, but then I'm like, no, don't do it. But those games, for some reason, whatever it is, I don't know why, but for some reason, fucking games that I should not rage at are the games that I rage at, and the games that you would think I would have a rage fucking fit about, nothing.
I think it's because like, and this is like a big reason why I never play Soulsborne or like I don't play like I liked Neo the first one, but I'll probably never play it again, and I'll probably never play the second one. It's because you have to be in the mood for that kind of game, and you know what to expect. Like you know what this game entails, right? So you're fully prepared, and you're fully willing and voluntarily playing that game, knowing full well what it's gonna be like, right? But when you're playing Ratchet and Clank, Future Tools of Destruction, and your controller goes through the drywall, that's a little bit more embarrassing. You know,
Yeah,
it was like the second boss of the game. Not
it's
even
like
that hard.
it's like the nerd version of being a man. Like you're like, no, I didn't throw the controller playing fucking Mario Party. I threw the controller playing Dark Souls.
Yeah, you're trying to make it sound not as bad.
Yeah,
another one that I when you mentioned like your Switch thing, fucking Contra 4. Who had the idea to put a fucking Contra game on the DS? You can't throw the controller because it's the entire fucking DS.
I punched my Game Boy one time playing Pokemon.
Did you? Did it wreck?
Yeah, oh yeah, it broke the screen.
Oh no. I've never wrecked a handheld, thank fuck.
I told my mom I dropped it.
Dude, I think, I don't know if I told this on the podcast before, but I swear I told you before in like private conversation, but I used to bring when I used to work night shift, I used to bring my PSP to work every night all the time. And my PSP, I had like, because we had like lockers, because I would work like overnight or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever fucking reason, probably because I'm like not a neat and tidy guy, every time I'd like open my fucking locker, my PSP would slide out of the locker and smash on the floor. And like the PSP, I don't know if all the models are like this, but I had the 3000, and like every little piece of that can like pop off.
Yeah.
And it's just like it got to the point where it was like kind of funny. They would fall out of my locker, hit the floor, and just pieces of PSP would just fly everywhere. Well, and then I'd just like snap it back together and it'd be good to go.
Did yours have the shitty battery cover that like after a while the clip on it just wore out and then your battery cover would not stay on?
Mine still stayed on despite dropping it 5,000 times.
I bought a PSP and my fucking cover would not stay on. And I thought maybe it was like the battery size was too big, because I bought like I bought one of those like replacement batteries.
Oh, and, yeah.
I thought maybe the battery was too big, like it wasn't the right kind.
Yeah.
And so I like kept trying to, and then I just realized the clip was fucking worn out, and it just would never go back on. So like my PSP, I had to like fucking tape it to get
the battery pack would stay on.
Yeah, because otherwise it would just cut off when I was playing.
Fuck. I have my Game Boy Advance SP. I don't know what it is, but I have to like fucking death squeeze it for the battery to connect. So when I'm playing, because if I like let go, it'll just like power down.
Yeah.
I don't know what would even anyone listening or watching this, if you know what that is.
My PS2,
tell us in the comments.
I had one of the Slims. My PS2's disk drive, like, you know how they flipped up?
Yeah.
Mine somehow got like warped. And so, like, you know how when it goes down, it clicks down and it, like, helps the disc spinner thing, whatever.
Oh, yeah, like it puts some pressure on it almost.
Right. To where it shows that it should be reading a game.
Yeah.
It doesn't do it anymore. I have to, like, set, like, something...
a book on it or something.
Yeah, something decently... Not super heavy, so it doesn't fuck up the disk drive, but just something, like, light enough that it holds it down.
Yeah, dude. My PS1, my original like PlayStation, I don't know if I think it's the, you know how like there's that open button on the right side? Yeah. The open button like only works sometimes. Like, you know when you get like a door, those old door handles where like sometimes it'll like you've got like the thing and then sometimes it'll poke out a little bit and latch and sometimes it won't. It does that like all the time. But thankfully I don't need it because my PS2 plays all my PS1 games. But so and that is how we derail the podcast.
Yeah, for 16 minutes. So
Tell us your gamer rage stories
Yeah.
in the comments below.
Yeah, let us know your gamer rage story. So games we're playing and games we're excited for. So, tell you what, why don't you go first?
All right, well, I am playing and excited for Dragon Quest Monsters 3: The Dark Prince. This has pretty much been like the game I've been looking forward to all year. It is a prequel to Dragon Quest 4, which is my second favorite game of all time, and I streamed it for 7.5 hours today straight.
I know, I kept getting on Twitch and I'm like, he is still on. Because I was like, when are we going to record the podcast or whatever? Because we've been kind of struggling for scheduling time lately.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, when are we going to record this? Maybe he's off stream by now. And then I hit Twitch and it's like, he is still live. I'm like, fuck, man. I'm never going to be able to catch up.
The worst part is I was up till like 2:30 streaming it last night.
Yeah.
And then I had a video coming out this morning, so I like set my alarm for like 8:45, and then I was up and I was like, well, video's up. I might as well start streaming early too. And then I started streaming at like I think it was like 9:30 until 5 p.m.
I still need to watch that video.
Yeah, so does everybody else apparently. It sucks, dude, because the way the YouTube algorithm is like I do like top 10 videos and top 5 videos, but as soon as I started doing like more Dragon Quest, like a lot of Dragon Quest style videos, as soon as you make a video that isn't Dragon Quest, it's just like the YouTube would just like flushes your video down the toilet, man.
Trust me, bro, I know. That's how it was when I was doing remake content. If I did a Final Fantasy VII video, they popped off. If I did a fucking video that was nothing related to it,
yeah,
it was
just like doesn't show anybody or something.
It makes you feel like you waste your fucking time.
Yeah, because YouTube, it's a top 5. So
well, the problem is YouTube doesn't send your notifications out, and that's a major problem. But
yeah,
if you don't like, the algorithm learns what people like to watch. So if you have somebody that watches every single one of your videos and all of your videos are Final Fantasy, let's just say Final Fantasy VII related, like mine were.
Yeah.
If I were to make like a God of War video,
yeah,
even though that person watches my videos every single time I post them,
yeah,
it won't give them a notification for that video.
No,
because it's not Final Fantasy.
Yeah, it's
brutal, unfortunately, that causes a lot of creators a lot of problems because, you know, you might have 1 million subscribers and 900 people got a notification for your video because it's different. It's different from your normal content. So
yeah, well, that's like when Donkey did his bad videos arc. Remember that?
Yeah.
There's like a year where he's like, I'm only making bad videos. And then all of a sudden he ended up with like 2 million subscribers because all he did was make bad videos.
Yeah, because that's what the algorithm wants. It wants like
so
easy,
weird,
pumped out content like XQC's fucking reaction videos where he reacts to another YouTube video, walks out of the room for 10 minutes, comes back, and then ends the video. And it's like, you didn't react to that fucking video. You walked out while someone else's video was playing. You got more views than they did, and you did not transform the content. So you basically stole someone's content for your own.
It's awful, dude.
And if you look at it statistically speaking, even those people that react to videos, the traffic generated to that video is almost non-existent because people already watched the video.
Yeah, you're not going to go watch it again.
You're not going to watch it again. So the traffic going to that person is minimal at best.
Yeah, they need to work out like a 60, man, my math is bad, 60-40 split or something for the original video for people that do react content and stuff like that. Because it's like, I don't know, it's not, there's zero work involved, man. You just sit there, eat a sandwich, and watch a video. I mean, I do that at lunch every day.
Yeah, pretty much. just start filming it and uploading it.
I should just, start filming that and uploading it.
But anyway, Dragon Quest Monsters 3.
Dragon Quest Monsters. So it's been great, man. Like I said, prequel to like my favorite game since I was like 10 years old. It's really cool because that was like an NES game. I just finished. I was streaming the remake of Dragon Quest 4, and I literally finished the post-game super boss, which I've never beat before, and I finished it. the night before Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince came out, and so it's really cool to just like see all these places from this game. I loved growing up in like 3D and like being able to walk around and like I don't know. It's just really cool when you can see a game that's was like an NES game and then like a DS game, like not a 3D game or like not a 3D style like DS RPG, but like a 2D looked almost like a Super Nintendo style graphics remake, right? And to see it now before the events of that game happened, but in like fully realized like 3D environments and stuff like that. And then the fact that it's giving like backstory to all these like minor characters in like the main town and stuff like that. Or not the main town, but the character that you're playing as is main town is really cool. And you're getting backstory on the main villain and seeing things from his perspective and stuff like that.
Well, and the thing that I have not, just for some background for me, I'm also playing the game, by the way. So I have never played Dragon Quest IV. I know bits and pieces from you, like when we've been playing Dragon Quest X, and you've brought up like Estark, and you've brought up like a few other characters like Sorrow and stuff. Like me and you have talked about the game, but I've never actually played it. Yeah. So for me, like I'm sitting here playing it, and I feel like in Dragon Quest Monsters 3, the backstory to everything is being presented very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you might have, like, a 10-second scene in an area, and then that, like, explains, like, a good bit of lore in those, like, few seconds that you get. But it's like, I already have established a knowledge of what's going on well before the gameplay starts.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, okay, Sorrow is in this village, and, like, people don't really like him because he's part monster or whatever. And like, so, you know, he's got like a sick mother and everything. And like all of this backstory is being presented to you in like 10 to 20 second increments.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time you get to the gameplay, you're like, all of this is already established. And it's kind of cool that they do it this way because like, I know sometimes the worst thing for me is when I start a game and I have 20 minutes of cutscenes before I get to play the fucking game.
Yeah.
And in this, it's like maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes of cutscenes before I get to play. And then it's like, boom, you are into the monster catching. Boom, you're into learning mechanics. You're learning how the game works and everything. Like all in this very quick motion, but still allowing the player to know what's going on even if they've never played Dragon Quest IV. And I think that, for me as a new player, has really helped.
Well, I will say all the stuff that you've learned about Sorrow in like the opening of the game is stuff that I too just learned about Sorrow for the first time.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I figured like in 4 they had explained it a little.
Nope. Sorrow, you don't know, like, so the whole like Sorrow's dad and his mom and like all this stuff, you don't know any of that. That's all prequel territory. Yeah.
So I guess so my question would be like, do you feel like it adds something to him for obviously it does, but like does it add something to him that changes how you feel about him in 4 so far, or is it just kind of you're up in the air right now until
it kind of does? But Sorrow always had a good reason for what he was doing. Like in Dragon Quest IV, like Sorrow's like my favorite villain of all time.
Spoiler territory, by the way, everybody, just in case.
Yeah, it's not like big spoilers, but basically like Sorrow sees how like monsters are treated badly by humans. He sees how like other like basically non-human races are treated by humans, and he's kind of in this tough place. Like I don't know if anyone who's watched like even like Star Trek or something, like Sorrow kind of resonates with like almost like Spock's character, where he's half Vulcan, half human. So the humans kind of rip on him for not being human, and the Vulcans rip on him for not being Vulcan. And that's kind of how Sorrow is treated by everyone, right? And this game is kind of like his origin story, but also his like comeuppance. Like in Dragon Quest 4, he's the leader of the of like basically the monsters, the monster army or the monster realm or whatever you want to call it, right? And this kind of tells you how that came to be. And the reason he becomes what he becomes in Dragon Quest 4 is because he needs power to protect the things and people he cares about that nobody else is protecting, right? And once he gains this like ultimate power, he slowly learns like he has to lose what bit of humanity he has in order to fully fully become one with this power, right? And so that's kind of what happens is the reason he goes between like he goes from being like a villain that you can resonate with and be like, yeah, this guy is doing what he feels is the best thing, what he feels is right to protect the people he cares about, to all of a sudden being, no, we need to fucking stop this guy, is because he goes over the tipping point, you know what I mean, when it
Mhm.
comes to power. And he can't control himself. Even on the NES version, when you fight him as the final boss, he says, I don't remember. Like he's like, I don't remember. He's like, I need to destroy you. I know I need to destroy the humans. That is what needs to happen. And I know in my heart that that is the right thing to do, but I don't even remember why, basically, at this point. And it's like the way that this game shows, and I think it was perfect for them, because in the original Dragon Quest Monsters was a spin-off was a prequel to Dragon Quest 6. And Terry in Dragon Quest 6 is arguably the only good character in that whole fucking game. And he as a kid, or yeah, as a kid, so in Dragon Quest 6, his sister is basically, if I remember correct, his sister is taken by like bandits basically from him. And his journey, you don't know this when you first encounter Terry, but his journey, and he's an absolute dick to the main party, because his journey is to become more powerful no matter what. And so he's looking for like the most powerful sword, and he's gonna fuck you over in order to get it, because as the hero you want to get the most powerful sword, right? Because
Right.
you're on the quest to save the world. But Terry just wants to become the strongest because he's got like this massive inferiority complex, because when he was a kid, these fucking guys made off with his sister that he was supposed to be, as far as he's concerned, protecting, and he wasn't strong enough to protect her. Well, that's essentially I don't want to spoil too much, but that's kind of what happens to Sorrow as well in Dragon Quest 4. Um, and kind of happens to him in Dragon Quest Monsters 3 as well, because his mom is sick, right?
Mhm.
Like so you see that happening as well. So he's kind of got that I need more power to protect the ones I love. And the reason it works so well is because, like I said, Dragon Quest Monsters 1 is a prequel to Dragon Quest 6, where you play as Terry, and his sister is basically taken away from him by this monster and pulled into this other like monster world or whatever, and that's kind of what kickstarts the first Dragon Quest Monsters. So to come full circle so many years later, in both the fact that it's a prequel to another mainline Dragon Quest game, and that it's that whole like power dynamic, like this is how he's basically compensating for not being powerful enough to protect his mom. And then once the events of 4 kick off, that amps it up like basically threefold, where he wasn't powerful enough to protect these other people that he found were very important to him. And the only people that were really keeping his humanity were the people that he cared about, and something happens to them in Dragon Quest 4 that pushes him over the edge.
Now, do you think there's going to be an alternate ending to Dragon Quest Monsters 3 where like Sorrow doesn't go that route, or do you think like it's just going to stay canon?
So that's what I was worried about, and because of some of the trailers and stuff, I wouldn't be too upset if it did like change some things. Like there's one thing that was changed. Have you met Rose yet
No, I'm
in
I'm literally
you're
in the
super
tutorial.
at the beginning. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a part where these guys are attacking Rose, and in the original game, Sorrow just like lights them on fire and kills them. And in this, he lights them on fire and then they kind of like run away. Like maybe they die still, I guess, but it doesn't show them dying in this one when he like lights them on fire.
It doesn't show like you're saying. Maybe it doesn't show his complete disregard for humanity. It's
no, it
more of
kind of
like,
does. Like he straight up lights them on fire, but they don't like it doesn't show them on screen dying, I guess I should say.
right. Well,
Whereas
I guess I'm more talking about like the visual representation of him. Like he's just losing his shit on these people, and he just kills them right there where they stand. Is what I mean. It's kind of not like it's not as brutal.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
little less toned down in that part. But he still might have died. Like it doesn't show him die, but he lights on fire and then the guy just like runs away screaming basically. But in the NES version, he just lights him on fire and you just see the guy like flicker out and die. And same within the I believe in the remake, the same thing happened in the remake of 4. But in some of the trailer footage, like I still don't know for sure because in some of the trailer footage and some of the like preview footage of the game, it has shown the Chosen, which is like the hero and his crew, basically, right? And since this is a prequel, like they shouldn't meet, but they do meet in one of the trailers. But I don't know if it's like a prophecy being shown to Sorrow because there's stuff at play here behind the scenes. Like there's a guy who ends up, if you in the remake of Dragon Quest IV in the post game, when it all plays out in the end, he's the guy that was like the mastermind that fucked over Sorrow and kind of led to him reaching that tipping point and all that. And you meet him in Dragon Quest Monsters 3. Yeah, and you can tell he's already setting this up. And the whole plan, like the whole thing where like as Sorrow, you want revenge on your dad because he put that like curse on you that you can't attack monsters and stuff like that, and he's kicked you out of the Diabolic Hall and all that stuff. That guy set that all up. Like he's the one he convinced your dad to kick you out, and he's convincing you to kill your dad because he's looking to capitalize once you take out his dad. He's in Dragon Quest IV. He's looking to capitalize on
which
that too.
It's funny because like I think introducing the mechanic through storytelling was a really good choice here because like how you go and you're like I said, it's like 10 to 20 second scenes and then you get the plot pushed along or whatever. But the idea that within the first 5 minutes of the game, you already know why you can't attack monsters and why you spend the game taming monsters. Like it's so cool that they have just established everything right up front. They show you the scene between him and his dad right up front. You know, obviously they don't show what he looks like, but they push the plot along in a meaningful way and introduce the gameplay mechanic immediately. And then even in the cutscene in the village where the monster tamer shows up at the very beginning, you know, Sorrow pulls out his sword and he's going to attack. And then all of a sudden the spell kicks in and he can't.
Yeah, like that curse or whatever.
And it's like they're just establishing immediately that, hey, you can't attack monsters physically. You have to have monsters attack for you. And now, boom, gameplay. Boom, you're capturing monsters. You're getting your starter monster, like all of that. So I think it's a really good setup, and it's so far I like the game. I think it's not what I was expecting. I guess I was expecting more of like a Pokemon-esque style of catching and like evolution and stuff like that. Like a slime would evolve into like a king slime or something like that. But you kind of have the synthesis system, which is a little bit like an evolution system, but it wasn't what I was expecting. But I think quality-wise, it's really, really good.
Yeah, the synthesis is honestly, I prefer it over evolution because there's so much more customization because you can take two different monsters with two different skill trees, pick the skill trees you want, and put those into the next monster and stuff like that.
So it's kind of like the Pokemon breeding thing a little bit.
Kind of, yeah, a little bit. The other thing that I like is how it doesn't seem forced because and like I don't know how I never could have foreseen that Sorrow would have been the star of a Dragon Quest Monsters game. Um, and I don't know how, because looking back, even on the NES, they referred to Sorrow as the master of monster kind. And the fact that he can't attack monsters, and like that was never established in Dragon Quest 4. That's something new to this game, is that like you never knew that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but the monsters respect him. Like he leads all the monsters in Dragon Quest 4. And the reason and the whole like progression of this game is showing like why the monsters respect him so much. He's able to recruit all these monsters as you fight some of the bosses in the story in this game. A lot of the bosses in this story are bosses that are in Dragon Quest 4 working for Sorrow. So he like wins over their respect by beating them and like doing all this stuff, and it's really cool seeing how he like amasses his army slowly throughout the story of this game, and becomes like such a powerful force in Dragon Quest 4. It's just like I don't know, it's a really good way to tell his origin, and it
almost
suits the narrative without having to change stuff.
It's almost like let me give an example that kind of would be similar. So it's like if Gold and Silver had come out before Red, Blue, and Yellow, and you got to Mount Silver and fought Red, and you'd heard throughout the entirety of Gold and Silver about Red, and how he became a Pokemon Master, and why he's on the mountain and everything else, and then Red, Blue, and Yellow would have come out, and then you're playing as the kid, you're playing as Red, becoming the Master.
So that is kind of, I never thought of it like that, but it is kind of similar, like if it was like that way.
Mm-hmm. So it makes sense. I like it. I think it's kind of cool. It's a good way to do an origin story about a villain that doesn't ruin the integrity of the villain.
Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because like so far everything that's happened has happened within, like it hasn't broken any canon or anything like story wise. There was a part where you're asked by this like very powerful figure if you're going to help the Chosen, and I chose no because I was like, I know that this is the canon choice. Like Sorrow wouldn't have chosen to help, or wouldn't have said yes to go help the Chosen. So I chose no, and I immediately like afterwards I looked on Reddit and somebody was asking like, "Hey, is this gonna like completely? Does this decision change the whole game?" And the one guy commented, "I chose yes," and this like all powerful being says to you, "I can tell you're lying." So far, no matter what, it hasn't broken canon. So I am looking forward to seeing if it does in any way. There is this underlying sub story that I've just uncovered in my playthrough so far, that the one character shows up in Dragon Quest 4 as this like I don't want to say, as this character that you have to help out in Dragon Quest 4, and she's kind of like a background character in that, but she's kind of playing a pivotal spot in this like story that's starting to unveil that happened like years ago before this Dragon Quest Monsters game. And I was like, fuck, that person is this person. And it's just cool seeing the backstory, like going further, like further fleshing out these characters that were like minor characters in Dragon Quest 4, but are becoming like these like important characters in this game. And it's just kind of cool to see that extra like bit of detail while still falling within the realm of like all this stuff that's happening in this can still perfectly fit what happened in Dragon Quest 4.
So when I want to clarify earlier, because I don't think what I said earlier came across the right way. When I meant alternate ending, I didn't mean like that the game would change how like everything happened or whatever. I more meant like if by certain choices would give you an alternate ending.
Yeah.
So not like breaking canon with the ending, the actual ending being like Sorrow becomes a good guy or something like that. I meant
Yeah, no, that's a legitimate question that in itself though,
yeah.
because of what the trailers had been showing.
I meant more like if you make certain choices throughout the game, will you unlock like a secret alternate universe ending where like Sorrow doesn't become the villain of 4? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's still something that I'm trying to figure out as I play through it because it's totally possible. And so there was it's kind of sucks because it was only released in Japan this part. I did do a YouTube video on it. It's called like the storybook intro of this game, like Dragon Quest Monsters 3: The Dark Prince. And it basically says like it's kind of like almost like a little bit spoilery, which is weird, which is maybe why they didn't release it in the West. But there's a part in it where you know that little slime that's his buddy at the beginning. I can't
Yeah.
remember his name.
I can't either.
Um, he goes to see the Chosen because in Dragon Quest IV, there's a point where they're like, no, Sorrow has to be stopped, and so in this storybook thing, he that slime goes to meet the Chosen to be like because he wants to protect Sorrow because they're buds, right? And he's like, you can't kill him, like he's a good guy deep down, blah blah blah. And in the storybook trailer thing, the hero and the Chosen say, perhaps under different circumstances, we could have been friends. And I was like, oh man, like I don't remember that from the games. And I don't remember it from the original on the NES. But when I beat Dragon Quest for the DS remake, uh, and beat the post game, after you beat the post game, you go to the Zenithia, which is like the kingdom, the castle in the sky, where like the Zenithian dragon is and all that. And Sorrow's like, I can't go. I'm not going. I don't want any part of this. I can't be seen there. Blah blah blah. And then before he leaves, he says, "Hey, maybe under different circumstances we could have been allies." And I was like, oh, that's from the DS remake. So he does say that. And so that's why there's still that speculation, like, will this game end up where you're actually like helping the Chosen and stuff like that? And there's parts in the game now that I've just come across where it kind of hints at that, but then also hints away from that. And it's like,
So it's
so
kind
it's
of
still
like
up in the air.
it kind of reminds me of like a similar form of I'm gonna spoil something in Chrono Trigger here, so just so everyone's aware, skip about 30 seconds after I say this. So it's kind of like in Chrono Trigger, where if you make a certain choice at a turning point in the game, you can recruit Magus.
Yeah.
And so, like, or you can kill Magus, and then
Yeah.
it doesn't really change the story, but it kind of does a little bit because, like, now you're seeing his backstory and all this other stuff. So
Yeah,
it's like,
you're learning a lot more
yeah.
about him.
But okay, spoiler over. But
Yeah.
yeah, I as a non-Dragon Quest fan, I'm kind of excited to see how this game goes. And if there are choices that make a difference, I would like to compare my choices to your choices and see if we had like different outcomes or whatever.
Yeah.
So I
So
think
I don't think your choices have different outcomes because that's what that guy on the as soon as like I checked Reddit or whatever and I said no, that I'm not going to help the Chosen because that's what Sorrow would have said.
so. It might just
Um
be alternate dialogue then.
yeah, it is because that's when that guy says I can tell you're lying. You're
Okay.
lying. You're lying to my face. You're not going to help him. Um, so the dialogue options aren't going to make a difference. So that makes me believe that it's going to stick to canon, but I still don't know 100% if it's going to stick to canon just cuz some of the stuff that we saw in the trailers and promotional material leading up to the game. So
Well, and
I hope it does, but who
I know
knows?
that some games have like, especially games with collectibles, if you collect a certain amount of stuff or whatever, um, like you might unlock a secret ending or something like
Yeah.
that. And I almost wonder like you have to get like a certain amount of monsters
Could be.
in your log or whatever, and if you do, like maybe you unlock an alternate ending, or maybe it's like capture all monsters or something like that. That'd be kind of cool. But
and Dragon Quest has done a lot of like what if stuff too, because like there's multiple different timelines. Like you've got
well, isn't Dragon Quest 11 like a culmination of a bunch of different like what ifs?
no, Dragon Quest 11 is canon, but it's
Well, right, but I mean,
don't wanna,
like
I don't want to ruin what Dragon Quest 11 is, because if anyone's played through like the whole series and then plays 11, your cock will explode off of your body and rocket into the sun
Yeah.
when you finish that game, because of all the ties it has to the other games.
Yeah.
But with when it starts out, it has none basically. But with so Dragon Quest Builders, for example, at the end of the original Dragon Quest, when you get to the Dragon Lord, he says, "Hey, you're supposed to kill the Dragon Lord, right?" But when you get to the Dragon Lord, he's like, "Hey, how about you join me, and I'll give you half the world." And you can say yes, and then it like resets your save file, and
the leftovers of my peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Exactly. And then in Dragon Quest Builders is the sequel to that ending of the game. So it's the sequel to the bad ending of Dragon Quest 1. So they've done like the split timeline thing. So that's why that, like, as much as like I wanted to stick to the canon, it wouldn't be outrageous if it was like a split timeline thing.
See, that's kind of cool, because the Nier series and Drakengard series does something similar.
Oh yeah, it does.
So
absolutely.
Drakengard has, as a lot of people know, the Nier and Drakengard series are connected through ending E in Drakengard. However, there are several endings to each of the Drakengard games and the Nier games, and not all of them are considered canon. So for example, Nier Replicant just got a new ending E when it got its remake. And that ending connects to Nier Automata completely canon-wise. And the ending E of Drakengard connects canonically to Nier Replicant. So the impact of Drakengard 1's E ending directly impacts Nier. They're directly connected.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that games do that, where like, and I think
when they do it well.
Not
and what's funny, Final Fantasy VII remake.
What's funny, yeah. What's funny about Nier is that ending E was supposed to be like a joke ending for Drakengard.
Right. Is that the baby one?
No, that is the one where you have like the rhythm game with the dragon at the very end fighting.
I don't know if I got that ending.
Yeah, the giant bitch in the fucking city. And
okay, no, I do.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah, I know now that you say that.
Yeah, and if you get that ending, you'll see that it connects to Nier Replicant in that way. And it's funny because like that was supposed to be like a joke ending.
Right.
And then Yoko Taro was like, "Okay, well I'm going to connect Replicant to
this one.
So we're going to use ending E as the connection to Nier." And then that's how those games are fucking connected, because it was kind of a joke, and then it's like, but what if we connected that joke ending to a serious game?
Yeah. But it's like that. Dragon Quest is kind of like now anyways. Dragon Quest is like that. But if both ending E and ending D got a sequel, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of cool, like in that aspect, and that's why it adds almost like more mystery to this game, because it could be like, okay, like we know that this is gonna happen. If it does, that's good. We still want to find out how it gets to this point. But if it changes, that's kind of cool too, because I want to see how it changes.
Zelda kind of has a similar timeline.
Yeah, I would say Zelda and Dragon Quest have the most similar, like the way their timelines work.
Because it's like, if Link defeats Ganon in Ocarina of Time, then there's a timeline for post-defeat. If he doesn't defeat Ganon at the end of Ocarina of Time,
then it's Majora's Mask, right?
Yes. No.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. I don't remember. I'd have to look again.
Oh, okay.
But then there's like Link was defeated timeline. And then there's one like, I want to say there's another one where it's like Kid Link from Ocarina of Time, like post something, and then that's another timeline in and of itself, and then like they all kind of culminate into like I think Breath of the Wild and all of those. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but they all connect in a certain like timeline way to where they all are kind of canon, but like not. It depends on what canon you are following is what game you're playing.
Right. I would say Dragon Quest is a bit like of a like more tidy version of the Zelda style timeline kind of thing.
Okay.
Like there's definitely like this event leads to this, and then this leads to this, and like stuff like that. Like it's definitely like Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 is a trilogy, and 4, 5, and 6 is a loose trilogy. Like they still take place in the same world, and they take place years and years after each other. But 1, 2, and 3 is like you're playing as like relatives of the characters from the previous game in 1, 2, and 3 kind of thing. Whereas after that, it starts getting a lot more like loosely connected. But yeah, I don't know. It's been really good. I've been enjoying. I'm just now hitting like some big story parts. The thing about the Dragon Quest monster games is you can spend like 10 hours just grinding and doing synthesis to customize your monsters, and I just love that shit, right? So it's another thing is a lot of people are shocked by the difficulty because a lot of the Dragon Quest monster games can be pretty tough. Like if you have to put time into like building your monsters like properly and actually like grinding them. Like you can't just like recruit the monsters and just level them up and expect to like beat the game. You have to do synthesis. You have to.
Do you think the wall difficulty of it is that people are coming off of Pokemon and thinking like it's a monsters game, so it can't be that hard, kind of thing?
That could be.
Do you think that's what?
And a lot of the newer Dragon Quest games are really easy. Like Dragon Quest 11 wasn't really that hard until you get to Act 3. Like it's a pretty easy game overall.
It's just really long.
Yeah, it's just really long.
So that's what I was thinking is like because Pokemon has always kind of had like a very there's difficulty spikes, but I wouldn't say that there's anything that's like overly difficult, like that you can't just fucking power level out of.
Yeah. And whereas this you can't. Like you can't if you could just keep trying to level your monsters and you're not gonna be able to beat it unless you use synthesis and build up your skill trees and stuff like that. So get the good abilities.
Yeah, so one might say that it could be like the Dark Souls of Dragon Quest Monsters games.
Yeah, there you go.
So that I'm going to go with a game that I've played here recently and a game I'm playing right now, which will segue into our main topic, which we're now an hour into. And that is I just finished Lords of the Fallen.
Did you play Lies of P?
I have not yet. I'm going to very soon.
I was gonna say, it looks like you'd like that one.
After I finish my 6th playthrough of Elden Ring, I am going to play Lies of P because I bought it on sale. But I just played Lords of the Fallen, and I gotta say, the first like quarter of the game was really good. There's a mechanic where you switch from like the normal realm, and then there's like the Umbral realm. And if you die in the normal realm, you revive in the Umbral realm, and you get a chance to escape that realm and go back to the normal realm. The problem with it is that it is part of the exploration is using the Umbral realm to get around to certain places. Because the normal map is overlaid on top of the Umbral map. And so, like, when you enter Umbral, things open up that aren't there in the real world. It's kind of like a ghost realm where like the land is completely transformed. And that is kind of cool at first, but like 10, 15 hours into the game, you're like, okay, this is kind of tedious. It's kind of, whatever. It's got some cool mechanics and it has some cool features and it has some good ideas. I just don't think it executes all the way. The bosses are way too easy.
Really?
Like, I don't think I spent more than maybe 5 to 10 tries on a single boss, if that. Like, they all have easy to read patterns. Like, and I'm not saying that like maybe this should be the game that gets people into Souls-likes. Maybe.
Right. Okay.
But I just feel like the game isn't very well balanced. Like they just throw random trash mobs everywhere, and sometimes that can be overwhelming. And then like they'll throw like trash mobs into a fight with a mini boss, or like a not really a boss, but a really tough enemy that basically should kind of be a boss.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, the balancing really isn't there. And I wore the same armor pretty much the entire game.
Weird.
I used like the same weapon pretty much the entire game. Just upgraded it, obviously. Put some runes into it. It has some good concepts. I'm not gonna lie and say that it doesn't, but I don't think it was what I was looking for when I was getting into another Souls type game. And it's kind of, some of the systems are very copy and paste of Dark Souls. And it just, I don't know, there's just something about it that by about the 25-hour mark, out of, I would say, a 40 to 50-hour playthrough, that I was ready for the game to be over. It kind of gave me the same feeling I had when I played Dark Souls 2, where I got about 20 to 25 hours into that, and I was like, yeah, I'm ready for this game to be over. And the insulting part was that the last two bosses, so you have a choice. If you do one ending, I don't think you fight the like final boss. If you do the non-Radiance route,
Right.
And if you do the Radiance route, you'll fight Adir as the final boss. But if you don't, I think you fight it's like this something noble. I can't think of his name, but anyway, he is piss easy. And I was just like, I felt like if he was the actual final boss of the game, I'd be really insulted. And then the actual last boss of the Radiance route is like, you have to go around the map killing like these trash characters.
Oh, really?
And they have like runes on them if they're the ones that you need to kill. And they like throw like fireballs at you and shit. And like sometimes they can mob you. And it's like, it's either you kick its ass or it just demolishes you. So it's kind of just not fun. It's just not fun. So I honestly, if I were to rate the first like quarter to half of the game, I'd be like, this is a pretty good game. Second half, I was just tired of everything and I was ready for it to be over. So yeah, just another Souls-like that didn't quite hit the mark, but I hear Lies of P is really good. A lot of people are saying it's like Bloodborne 2.0. And I love Bloodborne, so I'm like really excited to play it. But right now I'm playing Elden Ring again for the 6th time. I decided to go with like a ninja poison assassin type character. So I'm just going through and building that character up a little bit and trying to figure it out the best way possible and just finishing the game. And then I move on to Lies of P. But this is what's going to segue into our main topic, which is the Dark Souls effect. And what that is to me is that every journalist, every gamer, every fucking person wants to say if a game is hard, it's the Dark Souls of, and then it's like, this is the Dark Souls of Crash Bandicoot games, and this is the Dark Souls of Yoshi's Island, and like everything that's rated difficult is considered Dark Souls, and it's like, please stop, for fuck's sake. Like, not everything is a goddamn Souls-like.
Or even just like if it has good boss fights, they're like, oh, it's just like Dark Souls.
Yeah.
You know?
So
it's like, so dumb, man.
Yeah, it's like that effect has changed the landscape of gaming, because even to this day, Dark Souls came out in what, like 2011, 2012?
Yeah, I think
something like that. Because Demon Souls came out in 2009.
Yeah.
But I don't think really, like, it popularized the genre, or it started it, I should say. It started the genre of Souls-likes. And then Dark Souls came out, and it kind of just took the market by storm. And then, you know, it started being this cultural impact thing. And unfortunately, it's become more annoying than anything. Like, you have the get good movement, and you have this is the Dark Souls of movement. It's like, it
do you remember when Persona 5 came out and people were doing that with Persona 5. This is like the Persona 5 of,
yes.
oh, this is just like Persona 5. And it's like, oh my god, dude.
Or they think like that Persona 5 invented jazz music for some reason.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, so
there's so many games like that.
And
like
it's not just
situations like that.
Right. And it's not just like music or gameplay or boss fights or whatever. Like, there are gameplay mechanics where they're like, this is just like an RPG. Yeah, it is, but not really. Like,
yeah.
Like, we were talking earlier, like, okay, this game has stats, so it's got to be an RPG.
Yeah.
It has RPG elements, but
Call of Duty is the greatest selling RPG franchise of all time.
Yeah, this gun has a 12 penetration stat, so it's an RPG, right? So like Call of Duty is like the greatest RPG ever, you know?
Yeah. You level up in Call of Duty when you're playing online.
Yeah,
so
it's a first person shooting RPG.
Yeah.
So the reason why I wanted to talk about this too is because like I've been playing a lot of Souls games. I've played all of them lately over the last year. I'm currently replaying Elden Ring, and it got me thinking about how like people have said like Hollow Knight is is a Souls-like.
That's weird.
And I'm like, it's not every game that has a difficult boss is a fucking Dark Souls game. And the thing is, like, when people say that shit, like game journalists and stuff, they're minimizing what Dark Souls actually has done for like the gaming landscape, because like whether you like Dark Souls or not, the impact it's had cannot be understated. I mean, From Software has gone on to win 2 Game of the Year awards, one for Sekiro, one for Elden Ring, and it's because people actually enjoy the challenge that these games present. I mean, Elden Ring sold over 20 million copies. It's taken the world by storm. It's a cultural impact game, just like Dark Souls back in the day. And people just equate every fucking thing to, well, this is the Dark Souls of. It's like, just because a game has a hard boss does not mean that it's a fucking Souls-like. There's a certain parameter that those games have set over the years that make it a Souls-like. So, you know, interconnected maps on a 3D plane, deliberate, weighty combat, dodge rolling. You know, not everything in these titles has Dark Souls invented, not by a long shot, but it popularized the way the game works, improving your characters through, you know, loot and discovering of certain parts of the map, or NPC quest lines, dark storytelling that's done more through.
Are you telling me
world building and finding?
It sounds like Ocarina of Time is the Dark Souls of Zelda.
You know, it's funny. Ocarina has more enemy-driven combat like Souls games. You know, like where the enemy dictates the pace of the combat. So like,
yeah,
when you walk into a Souls-like game, you walk into it knowing that you do not direct how combat goes. This isn't like God of War on the PS3, you know, PS2, where, you know, you are hacking and slashing like crazy, like doing these crazy mad combos and doing everything like just, you know, powers and everything. Dark Souls combat's a little bit more deliberate. It's weighty. It's like, if someone's going to swing a sword, it's the speed someone would swing a sword in real life. Like, so if you're carrying around a giant...
slow as
right.
shit.
So if you're carrying around a giant greatsword, you're not going to be swinging it around like Cloud in Final Fantasy VII. Like, it's going to have weight to it. You're going to have to like swing it in timed sequences. And, you know, dodge rolling away from attacks and blocking with a shield and parrying and stuff like that. Like, the combat is just more weighty. And like, it bothers me because it happens literally all the time. This is the Dark Souls of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And I want to get into what I think the reason why Dark Souls is or became popular. And I want to get into, well, let's start with that. So I think the real reason it got as popular as it did is because those kind of bosses kind of went away for a while. But when we were growing up on like the NES, like you look at like Castlevania, you look at Mega Man and stuff like that on the NES, that's the boss style. That it's a pattern. It's 2D, so it's different. It's a pattern you have to memorize. You have to get used to. You have to learn the boss in order to be able to beat the boss, and in order to beat the boss well. And the better you know that boss, the more time you've spent with this, like going against this boss, the different strategies you've tried against the boss, the better and quicker and flashier you can defeat these bosses. And up until I feel like after the like Genesis era, because 3D movement wasn't as precise on the PS1 and the PS2, I think that's why those kind of bosses kind of went away, right? You went into, like you said, God of War style hack and slash. You went into or straight up like JRPG, like turn-based style, right? Like you didn't really have to where you had to like fluidly get out of the way and like memorize the boss's patterns in order to know when to strike this boss, when to get out of the way, what to strike them with. And I think the biggest reason that those games got as popular as they did is because of people like us. Like, I don't like Dark Souls, but I don't like Dark Souls because it's in a genre that I don't like. You know what I mean? Like, it's a 3D, like, as much as like you don't like it being called hack and slash, it is hack and slash. It's just calculated, and like you have to know the boss fights and learn the boss fights hack and slash. It's not just like fucking spam attacks and spam combos hack and slash. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's still a genre that I don't enjoy playing, but it's in a 3D environment. It's taking that NES hard and Super NES and Genesis hard boss fight situations, and finally, after a console generation absence, and putting it in a 3D environment where it actually works.
It's funny that I'm glad you mentioned Castlevania, because Dark Souls, not so much. Well, I guess Demon Souls you could say is too, but Dark Souls is kind of like a 3D Metroidvania. You have interconnected maps where like you have shortcuts you can take to get back to the bosses or back to certain areas you need to go to. The map is kind of layered on top of itself. So like when I go from Firelink Shrine to Sen's Fortress, I have to go through Firelink Shrine, I have to go through that church area, and then finally I get to Sen's Fortress, and that is my run to that area. Now I will get a checkpoint when I get to that area that allows me to not have to run from Firelink Shrine to get there, but there's also shortcuts that like take me to Sen's Fortress from Firelink Shrine faster than I originally went through it, because the first time you go through it, you're going through it the route the game wants you to, but then when you like back into a certain room, there's like a door you can unlock from the other side, where when you were on the other side of that door, you couldn't unlock it. So it's kind of like
that is like a 3D Metroidvania.
It's a 3D Metroidvania that allows you to make shortcuts. Once you get more power, you can come back and steamroll it a little bit better. The more abilities you unlock, the easier enemies become. But then you move to the next area, and the enemies become harder again because there's different patterns, there's different strengths, there's different weaknesses, and stuff like that, all while unlocking these maps and going through and trying to figure out where to go next. And so it is kind of like a 3D Metroidvania. And on your difficulty point, I want to say that I think, like, for me, so when I play these games, I know what's going to happen. I know I'm going to die. There's no way to avoid the fact that I'm going to die. But every time I die, I'm going to get a little bit farther into that boss fight.
You're going to learn the fight.
It's like a dance. Yeah. When you dance with a new partner, you don't know what your partner's thinking. But if you dance with that partner multiple times, you start to pick up on their foot placement.
Their rhythm, yeah.
Their rhythm and the back and forth. And sometimes you lead and sometimes they lead. And
the timing.
And everything else. And Dark Souls and specifically Sekiro. Sekiro is very much like a very well-coordinated dance. But Dark Souls is one of those games where you play it, and each time you get a little better, and you get a little better, and then eventually you overcome that adversity, and that's what those games were built for.
Yeah, and that's what the NES, like the NES, like Mega Man, Castlevania, like Ninja Gaiden, like
it's
you know what I mean?
It's like playing a NES or arcade game without the game sucking down quarters. The point of difficulty back in the day was to suck down quarters, make money, and make it hard for people to complete the games, because once they completed the game, they wanted to move on to the next game.
Yeah.
But if you make it harder, if you make them earn the quarter they put in, then that game is more rewarding to them because they overcame that challenge. And that's the thing. It
feels so good.
It really fucking does.
Dude.
When I finished Elden Ring, which was the first Dark Souls, like the Souls-like game that I played, the fucking emotion of overcoming this entire adventure that I just put myself through was amazing. And then I started New Game Plus because I'm like, what can I do going through this game again? And every boss that I had fought previously was now easier because I knew what to do.
Exactly.
And so it made it fun to like go through New Game Plus, create a new build with my previous stats, my previous weapons that I had and everything else, create a new build, go through these bosses again in a different way, but knowing how the bosses react to certain things and being able to use my new abilities with my old knowledge. Yeah. And so when I got through Elden Ring, it was almost like I became addicted. I'm like, I need to play all the Souls games. So I played every single Souls game over the course of like 6 months maybe, and finished it with Bloodborne. I got the platinum with Bloodborne. And I realized that, like, I had never truly understood what video games meant to me until I played those games. And it's weird because I've been playing games since I was fucking 3 years old.
Right.
Playing, like, you know, not really playing games, but kind of just dicking around on Mario and stuff as a kid.
Yeah.
And I never truly realized what I was looking for in a challenge from a game until I finished those games. And I'm like, this is the emotion, the dopamine, this is what I have been looking for forever. And it's like, you know, okay, overcoming Margit is the first true boss of Elden Ring, and he's hard as fuck. But every time I died, I got a little bit better, and I got his health down a little bit more, and I started dodge rolling better against his attacks. I started learning what directions to roll to avoid attacks, what directions to roll to, you know, like if an effect hit the ground, which way do I roll? You know, it made me feel great knowing that I tackled this boss myself. And especially in games like the earlier Souls games and Sekiro don't have either any summoning or don't have much summoning. So you have, like in Sekiro, there is no summoning. You have no one to help you. So you can't use co-op. You can't use like a summon to come in and distract the boss. It is you versus that boss. And when I completed Sekiro and I beat Ishin Sword Saint, it was like the greatest fucking feeling in the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, I understood at that point what the point of these games is. And it's to overcome adversity. And it teaches you things. Like,
oh yeah,
it teaches you how to be patient. It teaches you how to, you know, I spent a lot of games just beating my head against a wall until I beat something, right?
Yeah.
Like you just mash buttons until you beat it. You can't do that with Dark Souls. And it taught me, like, okay, the Jedi games by EA, Fallen Order and Survivor,
Jedi
right?
Survivor, yeah.
I played Survivor on Grandmaster, which is the hardest difficulty in the game. And yes, it was hard. And yes, I struggled. But because I had played all of the Soulsborne games, it felt natural to me. It felt like a natural extension of those games. And so Grandmaster wasn't as hard as it probably would have been had that been my first foray into that genre.
Right.
And I don't know, man, there's just something about completing a hard boss that has been kicking your ass
dude,
that just feels the fucking greatest.
Yeah, dude. Like this conversation we just had, honestly, like it makes me kind of understand why you like those games now because to me it's just a genre I don't fucking enjoy, right? And it's literally just the 3D version of the games I grew up playing, right? And
Right.
it's funny because a lot of people on a lot of the videos I make, like especially like the overrate, like top 10 overrated games or my top 10 whatever, anything where I'm like negatively criticizing something, people in the comments are always like, "This man just hates the third dimension." And I mean they're kind of right. Like I generally like when it comes to those kinds of games, like an actiony game, I prefer it in 2D. I don't want to fight the camera. Like I do not want
That
the camera
is
to
that
have
is
any fucking say in my failure.
that is one of the hard parts about like those games, because if you fight an enemy that's bigger than you,
Yeah.
sometimes you can get lost in the camera, especially
Or
if
you're
you're fighting.
rolling and now all of a sudden the enemy's like over here and you can
Right.
see their weapon coming in and you're like, "Where the fuck?" Like, "Oh man, that shit pisses me off."
Right. But and like I will say one thing that I didn't like about Lords of the Fallen, and it's something that I touched on in my like mini review there of it.
Yeah.
The boss runs were harder than the bosses. So to get to the boss was much harder than the actual boss itself, because the enemy placements, like
There's just like cheap enemy placement and stuff kind of.
yeah, kind of, they would put like a super hard enemy like halfway through, and like you haven't been to a checkpoint in a while.
Oh, I fucking
and
hate
then
that.
like
And
yeah,
you're gonna redo it all if you die.
yeah,
So you can't practice. You've gotta, dude, like, I don't know if you've played what you've played of like Mega Man and like the classic Castlevania stuff, but you've really
very very limited.
Cause like here's the thing, it's the same thing. Like if I sat down, I could sit down right now and play through all of Mega Man 6 and have little to no issues. Like I would die a lot, but I would be like, okay, that was just a mistake I made. And then I'd play through it. If you sat down and played Mega Man 6 right now, you would probably die like, I don't know, like 10 times in the first level. You know what I mean? But it's just that's how those games were, and it's overcoming that it just feels so good. But the fact that you mentioned like it's a 3D Metroidvania, and it's so funny because this is where we really like parallel sometimes without even knowing it, is like you don't like 2D Metroidvanias and I apparently don't like 3D Metroidvanias.
And that's what I
And,
was gonna say too. Was like there is something about a 2D Metroidvania. Like everybody's like, you got to play Hollow Knight. It's like the greatest game ever. It's just like a Souls game, and I'm like, okay, it's not, but okay. So I tried playing Hollow Knight, and I got about 30 minutes into it, and I'm like, I have no idea where the fuck I'm going. I don't know.
I hate that.
I don't know where anything's at. Like, I don't know what my actual goal is in this game, other than I have to go here and eventually find a boss that I might find, that I might not. I don't know. Like,
Right.
do I go like 3 screens over? Do I go 3 screens back? Like, I don't know where the fuck I'm going. Like, there's nothing pointing me in the right direction. There's like, and I understand that's kind of the point of it. You're kind of just supposed to explore and uncover secrets and eventually like get to the end of the game. But to me, I need to know that there's a goal, and obviously I know that there's a goal, but I don't see it, and
Right.
it just really bugs me, that format. But then I look at the Souls games and I'm like, that's the same format. It's just in fucking 3D.
Yeah, but here's the thing. And I've never played Hollow Knight, so I can't criticize it or anything like that. I've never played it. But there are good Metroidvanias, and when I say good, I mean cream of the crop, primo fucking quality Metroidvanias, and then there are bad ones. And dude, people are going to hate this, but I have not played a Metroid game that I would consider a good Metroidvania. I haven't. I played almost all of them. All
Yeah,
the
you
2D
did.
ones, I played them all. And I didn't like any of them compared to like the Castlevania ones. So
Well, so my thing,
yeah, go ahead.
So to touch on that a little bit, I don't like So one thing that Sekiro did that I didn't like at first, and now that I know what to do, I like, obviously it doesn't bother me now
Doesn't
because
bother you, yeah.
Sekiro is fucking awesome. But I don't like when I need a certain item to get past a certain challenge, and if I don't have that item, it's damn near impossible. And that, like, to get that item, they fucking hide it somewhere that you just have no clue where the fuck it's at or how to get to it or what to do or anything like that. Sekiro does it with the flame vent, and you have to, like, find a bell, and then you have to take that bell back to the temple, and then you have to go back to the past using that bell in the temple, find the item in a fucking encampment, come back, fight the ogre with it, because the ogre is, like, it's got red eyes, so it's weak to fire. It's, like, enraged or whatever, but it's also weak to fire. So if you use the flame vent, it weakens it, and you can get attacks in, stuff like that. And it's like, without that item, that fight is super fucking hard. Now, it's still hard, but with that item, it's much easier.
Right.
And I didn't like that Sekiro did it, and that's kind of when I first played Sekiro when it came out, that's what filtered me, was that fucking thing.
Okay.
Once I came back to it last year, and knew what to do, it didn't bother me near as much. And one thing that I can say that has helped me with the Soulsborne series is that I'm not afraid to look something up if I don't know where to go.
Yeah, so you're not thumbing your ass. You know what I mean? Like, just wait, like,
yeah,
fucking around.
And the internet has done a good job. Yeah, and the internet has done a good job of providing that information almost immediately. And so I think that's another reason why I don't like Metroidvania style games, is that I don't need to be handheld necessarily.
Yeah, same.
But I like having a sense of direction.
So here's the thing. So when I played the Metroid games, I played the Metroid games long after I played all the Castlevania games. The Metroid games, so like Symphony of the Night. So when you played Elden Ring, I'm equating that to when I played Symphony of the Night for the first time ever. So basically the Castlevania games before this were not Metroidvanias. Like Castlevania 2 was. Most people don't like Castlevania 2. It's like the first Metroidvania. It's rough around the edges. I enjoy it, but I understand. But Symphony of the Night is like one of, if not the best Metroidvania games ever. Like, Aria of Sorrow is, in my opinion, better, but Symphony of the Night is top fucking tier. And the whole thing, like, when you played Elden Ring, and this is something I didn't realize until now, when you played Elden Ring, you got that feeling, the same feelings I got the first time I would have played Symphony of the Night. Like, you're making this progression, you're fighting these hard bosses, but you can level. You can get better gear if you're stuck, but they're still fucking hard. You still have to learn the patterns, and it's like that, but it's also figuring out, like, you can figure out where to go and where to, not so much a good Metroidvania, you shouldn't have to figure out where to go, but you should have to figure out how can I say this? How to better connect to where you're going. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, that's a good Metroidvania. Whereas the Metroid games, you are humping walls constantly, and I hate that shit.
Are you talking about, like, you get like a bomb?
Yeah,
and then, like, there might be a random obscure corner of a room.
One fucking square that you have to bomb to fucking progress the game story kind of thing.
Yeah.
A good Metroidvania does not have that, despite what any fucking Metroid fan will tell you.
Mm-hmm.
It's you should have you enter the castle. Okay, have you played Symphony of the Night at all?
No.
You need to play Symphony of the Night.
To preface this, the only Castlevania games I have played is Lords of Shadow.
Yeah, those aren't Castlevania games, okay? Those are God of War games. The story is pretty cool in them, and they've got like references to the Castlevania games. So I've always treated, like, even when they first came out, like, you know when like Hollywood makes a movie of a video game?
Yeah.
Lords of Shadow is that for the Castlevania series.
Okay.
I'm dead fucking serious. It has nothing to do with the Castlevania series. It's its own separate like sub series, and it's basically like, yeah, it's like that. But you need to play Symphony of the Night. Symphony of the Night, it's a stormy night. It's a sequel, which hinders it a tiny, tiny bit until you realize you replay the ending. At the start of it, you replay the ending of the game of Rondo of Blood at the start of Symphony of the Night. They did that so that it could be standalone. But anyways, all of a sudden, it's a stormy night. This dude is fucking blasting through the forest on a fucking mission to get into Dracula's castle. You're one-shotting all the monsters, and then you get into this room, and then all of a sudden, Death shows up. And if you've never played a Castlevania game, you don't know this yet, but Death is basically like Dracula's right-hand man. He will do anything to help Dracula. He takes away all your equipment. Everything is gone once you meet Death. He fucks you up. You are now a little bitch. You're a little level 1. You've got a knife. Maybe you've got a knife. And now your goal is to work your way through the castle. You need to get this so that you can knock this wall down, so that you can do this and stuff like that. And you need to, a lot of the times the bosses will drop what you need to progress and stuff like that, right? But
kind of like Mega Man a little bit.
Kind of like Mega Man a little bit in that aspect. I never thought of that before, but yeah, kind of. But you need and as you progress, as you beat these bosses, you're constantly gaining like new abilities, new weapon types. Maybe this knife is better maybe this knife does more damage than this axe does, but maybe you personally prefer the playstyle of using axes. So you're gonna not even use this knife. You're gonna use the axe, right? And it's just like, which is weird because I hate fucking Dark Souls, but it's just like Dark Souls. The axes are slow, but they do a shit ton more damage. They have an arc attack. So it's a 2D game. So if you got a fucking bat pissing around and you're pissed off because a knife you have to hit like this, right? If a bat's fucking around here, I have to jump up and hit this fucking piece of shit. But if a bat's fucking around pissing me off and I have an axe, the axe attacks like this. It's slower. But if you got fucking bats flying around your head and you don't want to fucking be precise with your attacks, you can use the axe. Like, there's all these different approaches to the game. There's all these different ways to progress through the game, but you're never lost. In a good Metroidvania, you should not be lost. You should have to explore to find where you're going.
Yeah.
But once you find, like, you're always going to find, okay, this is a save room. Okay. This is a boss door. There's a boss on the other side of this door. Do I want to keep exploring or do I want to fight this boss? A lot of times, if you want to keep exploring, you'll keep exploring until you find something that you can't get past. And you're like, okay, well, back here, if I look at my map, right here is a fucking boss door. So chances are either the boss is going to drop what I need to get through this door, or the boss there's gonna be a room behind the boss that'll let me keep going. You know what I mean? A good Metroidvania is done like that. A bad Metroidvania has you humping walls and fucking not having a clue where the fuck you're going. And that is like 90% of the Metroid series, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel you.
But I feel like you need to sit down and play Symphony of the Night. And if you get stuck, just like when you're playing, like an Elden Ring or something like that, if you do get stuck for a period of time, just quickly look up what your last boss was, where you should be going, and find it that way. Like, you will almost never get stuck in Symphony of the Night.
Well, see, what's funny is, like, there are so many different routes you can take. Like, so Stormville Castle, for example, you can go right in the front door, but if you do that, so you can run to the boss. Okay, let me think about this. I believe that you can run to the boss room from the front gate, but you have a lot of deadly shit you got to run through, and it's almost impossible if you don't know the route, because you have these ballistas, you have these normal enemies that you have to run past, you have like this fucking like giant ogre thing, and like you can run past it, but you're going to have all this shit chasing you, and then eventually you'll get to the boss door and everything else. Or you can take the side route, which is unlocked by an NPC, which is just in the room next to the main gate. And that NPC will tell you, hey, there's a side route. Or he can say, well, if you want me to, I'll tell the guards to unlock the door. And you can go in, but just know that it's fucking dangerous as shit.
Right.
And you're probably going to fucking die. So you have multiple options to get to the boss. and you're not locked to one specific route. You just know that there might be an easier route to take than the one that you're currently on. I like that because like it gives me an option. Like if I want to be a fucking sweat and run through the fucking near impossible thing, I can, and it makes my
and
journey.
sometimes it's a shorter route. It's just more dangerous.
Yeah, but the other thing is there's a lot of things on that alternate route that I'm not going to get if I don't take it.
Yeah.
Because my focus is getting to the boss, whereas I might find a bunch of loot that I like, a bunch of armor that I like, or, you know, items that might help me with the boss or whatever. But because I took that shorter route, I don't have to go through all the bullshit of opening doors and all this other stuff. But it might frustrate the fuck out of me knowing that I'm one ballista shot away from death. Like,
yeah.
You know, so I like Elden Ring isn't so much of a Metroidvania as like Dark Souls is, because Elden Ring is an open world. So you can go pretty much anywhere and do anything you want as long as you're not locked progress-wise. And what's funny is a lot of people didn't know when Elden Ring first came out that you can actually skip Stormvale Castle entirely by taking this side road that's hidden off the beaten path and go straight to Liurnia. Now it is known now, obviously, but when the game first came out, people were having to go through Stormvale Castle. Now I believe you do have to go through it eventually, because eventually, like, it'll lock your progress, because you need these things called Great Runes, and the bosses drop Great Runes, like the main named bosses for the story drop Great Runes, and you have to have a certain amount to get through a certain area later in the game. But yeah, if you want to, you can completely skip Stormvale Castle almost immediately just using the side road, and you can go back once you've, you know, collected the things you want to collect.
See, and that's probably one place, like one way that it really differs from, say, Symphony of the Night, is that, and there are Metroidvanias where you can do things in like whatever order you want. There's not very many, but there are. But Symphony of the Night, there are certain items you do need. Like there's one part you'll like walk into this room and there'll be like a tunnel that's like maybe this big a wide, and there's fucking spikes everywhere, and it leads up, and you're like, what the fuck is this, right? And then later on, you get the ability to turn into a bat. So you can turn into a bat and you can fly through that. But until you get that bat ability, like the ability to turn into a bat, you aren't going to be able to get through that part, right? So some of the progression is locked as far as that goes, right? Like you can't just waltz up to Dracula. You still have to play through like most of like 90% of the bosses. There's definitely some bosses you don't even have to fight. There's some parts of the castle you don't even have to go to. There's also like 3 different endings depending on like if you like 100% the game and stuff like that too, right? Like there's different, a lot of the later Castlevanias do have some bullshit fucking endings where it's like, if you didn't have these goggles equipped while wearing this amulet, you get the bad ending. And it's like, what? That's kind of dumb, right? But Symphony of the Night is just so good as far as that. I feel like if you played that, you would understand that there are good Metroidvania games and that it can be done well. It just isn't often.
Yeah, see, like,
and then like as much as you'd be like, fuck, where do I go now? You'd be like, oh wait, there was that fucking area where there was those spikes and I couldn't fit through it, but now that I have a bat, maybe I can fly through there. You know what I mean?
Dark Souls does this cool thing too, where like you can start the game with this thing called the Master Key, and what I think is so cool about the Souls games too is that no one's playthrough, unless you like, okay, let's say there's a YouTuber I really like named Fightin' Cowboy, and he does 100% walkthroughs. He helps you get like the platinum trophy or all the achievements on Steam or whatever the case is for the game that he's playing. Yeah. So like he does those walkthroughs. So unless you follow his walkthrough to the letter, you're not going to have the same experience as anybody else that plays that game.
Right.
So like you can start the game with this kind of thing called, I think it's called the Master Key, and it unlocks a lot of different doors throughout the game that you wouldn't otherwise be able to unlock, and it can take you down different routes of the game that you wouldn't normally be able to go down. So like people that take that thing, like, so let's say I don't take that item. I take another item at the very beginning of the game because you get like I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a trinket or like a starting item, a gift or whatever that they give you. And that gift is what you start with in your toolkit. And it might be like the master key, or it might be like an extra upgrade thing, or it might be like something useless that's just a joke item that you can start with if you don't want any advantages or whatever. But it's just a thing. So if I don't take that, there's only a certain progression that I can go through. And even then, it's still kind of open because, like, I can go through... So I start at Firelink Shrine, right? If I go to the left and I go outside, there's a graveyard I can go through. Now, that graveyard is full of skeletons that are going to beat my fucking ass if I go through it. And it's right outside of the starting area. But if I go up the steps to the right, I go to, like, the open area where I'm heading towards Undead Burg, and Undead Burg is technically the first place I should be going from Firelink Shrine. But I don't have to if I don't want to. The game kind of gates you off difficulty-wise, but if you are willing to take on that challenge, you can go through those areas.
Right.
It's just not advised. But the game doesn't lock you out of going through that area, and I think that's a really cool setup that's kind of different from some Metroidvanias where they make you...
Yeah, I would say.
You know? Like, it is very highly recommended, and most people will not go through that graveyard except to pick up the items that are there and haul ass out. Like, there's a really good sword there. I think it's the Zweihander. It's a great sword, and it's one of the best. It's typically one of the better swords in the series. And so you run down there, you get it, you haul ass fucking out of there because the skeletons are fucking aggressive and they hit like a truck. But then you come back later once you've gone through Undead Burg and, you know, some of the different areas in the game. And once you get back there to that thing, you're like, oh yeah, skeletons? Fucking round 2, bitch. And then you just take them all out, right?
Right.
And then you go farther in and you're in this like tomb area. And then you go farther in and you're fighting like Nito, the god of death or whatever the hell he is. And like you start to feel like your progression actually matters.
Right.
And so like it is a Metroidvania, but it's almost like a open-ended Metroidvania where you don't have to follow...
It's more open. Yeah.
Right. And even though it's not an open world series until
Elden
Ring, there is that sense of freedom.
Yeah.
You know, it suggests a path for you, but not necessarily the one that you should take. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But to me, like Symphony of the Night, for example, a good Metroidvania, you should have your options, but there are hard stops in certain places, right, where you have to find something in order to progress.
And that's also what Dark Souls does too. But
I want you to play Symphony of the Night so bad. I would play Dark Souls if I could like literally play fucking 3D hack and like action games and stuff like that. I played honestly the first 3D action like hack and slash game was Castlevania Lament of Innocence. I rage quit that one. I played Curse of Darkness though, and it was much better, mainly because you get familiars and I can just make them do all the fighting for me.
Well, and you were telling me earlier that you played Demon Souls. And I'm like, no wonder you fucking don't like Souls games. That's like, okay, I'm just going to full disclosure. I like Demon Souls. Just to clarify for everybody that's about to hear what I say.
I liked it for a little bit, but it's clunky as shit, man.
Demon Souls is a game that is a product of its time. And it is the first Souls game, but it's by far not the best. It's not the worst. I think that goes to Dark Souls 2. Personal opinion, I don't like Dark Souls 2. It's very well documented that I don't like Dark Souls 2. But it's Dark Souls 2 is still not a bad game. It's just not a game that I enjoyed. Demon Souls, however, it's clunky.
It is very clunky.
It got better with the remake. It really did.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is super not generous with checkpoints. your checkpoints are literally when you finish a level. So the entire
it's the start. Yeah,
the
it's the start
entire
of the level.
the entire level is your boss run.
Yeah.
And that's not like Dark Souls at all. Because eventually you find bonfires and you find checkpoints and stuff. Whereas Demon Souls, you do not. If you die in 1-1 at the boss, you go all the way back to the fucking beginning.
Well, the bosses are your checkpoints, aren't they? Like when you kill the blob, that's where you spawn in the first level there.
Right, that's where 1-2 starts.
Yeah.
So Demon Souls, if your only experience with the Souls series is Demon Souls,
I played a bit of Bloodborne, and I didn't like that one either.
Bloodborne is another one that is hard for people to get into because of the 30 FPS stuff. And it's a little... It doesn't always have the greatest performance, but it is a good... I loved it. I platinumed it. So obviously it's a pretty good game for me.
Yeah.
If I was going to... and this is just the order that I would recommend them in. If I were going to recommend a Souls game for somebody to play... for their first one, it would either be Elden Ring or Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 is a little bit more linear than I would say the other two are.
Okay.
And it's probably the most approachable and best running of the Souls games. Whereas Elden Ring is obviously it's the newest, the flashiest, whatever.
Right.
But it has the ability, so like, let's say you're struggling with Margit, which is the first true boss of the game, and you just cannot beat it. You can go out, grind up, get the weapons you want, get the abilities you want, get the levels you need to boost your stats and everything, go back and fight Margit, and you can steamroll him.
Right.
Not necessarily steamroll, but your time will be a lot easier.
You're dealing more damage, and you can take a couple more hits, probably.
Right, exactly. So, I think, like, for me, Elden Ring is probably the most approachable, because it doesn't have the same shit that Dark Souls has in it. Like, you're not gonna... like, you will find places where you're gonna have, like, not the greatest footing, or you're not gonna have, like, you know...
I hate that. Dude, that shit is what pissed me off.
But the good thing about Elden Ring is that you don't run into that a lot. Unless you're exploring areas where that is a thing, right?
Right.
Like, you can choose not to explore those areas.
I would
for the most part
choose not to explore those areas.
And this is also like the first time where like the games have had a dedicated platforming ability.
Okay.
Whereas like the other ones have been kind of like platforming is a afterthought.
Yeah.
And so you can jump kinda, but not really.
Yeah.
Whereas like Elden Ring is built with the idea that your character is going to be jumping. And you get a horse too that lets you go around the open world on. And the horse has a double jump ability. So traversal is much more fluid in Elden Ring than it is in the other Souls games.
That makes sense.
But
for me, it's not even like, obviously it was the clunk that like drove me away from that genre. But at the end of the day, even a game like Castlevania Curse of Darkness, which was very, like, if I had to relate it to something that you would be familiar with, it would be like God of War, right? Like the PS2 one, right? And it's just, I can't do like 3D hack and slash games. It's just not something I enjoy doing. And it's that aspect as well. Like, even if they weren't clunky, I feel like at the end of the day, I forced myself through Curse of Darkness, but it was like, fuck me. I remember, dude, if you ever pull up my stream where I fight Dracula at the end, I'm basically just screaming and yelling, fuck him up, Zapdos, because that's what I named my Phoenix that was like fighting him. And it was like, oh my god. I was like trying to dodge, because he's attacking you from fucking, like, I have problems with 3D, like in video games, right? So he's got like this fucking laser that he shoots, and it goes like this, but then it goes like this, and like it like sweeps like all around, and like it's like a jump over it if it's coming this way. And if it's going this way, I'm fine. Like I can jump it this way. But when it's coming this way or it's like spinning in a circle like this, I'm fucked.
I feel
I'm
you.
taking it's like there's nothing I hate more in any game ever, especially like an action-based game, be it a side scroller or a 3D one, when I feel like I'm taking mandatory damage. To me, if you are good enough, it should be possible to beat a game or a stage or a boss without taking any damage. There should never be, in my opinion, mandatory damage. And whenever I'm like taking mandatory damage, I get so mad. Where it's like there's nothing I could have done to avoid taking this damage. And in 3D games, because I don't have 3D depth perception in video games, a lot of the times if it's something that's covering the floor and coming towards me this way, a lot of times for me that's mandatory damage, even though it isn't actually, but for me it is.
So Dark Souls and all those games do not have mandatory damage because there's a guy on YouTube/Twitch that actually does no-hit runs of these games.
Yeah, there's a ton of no-hit runs for.
So there's actually a run called the God Run, and it's where you go from Demon Souls to Elden Ring with no hits. And if you get hit in any of those games, you have to start back over on Demon Souls.
Yeah.
And people have done it.
But what I'm saying is, for me, because it's a 3D hack and slash game, I am going to be taking damage that I can't avoid because I can't tell how close to my character that attack or whatever is, right? So it's like, man, even when I'm like, honestly, even when I'm driving at night, my wife gets mad at me. Like, I'll like if somebody's coming, I have no, and I think this is the same. I think it's the same thing. I have no at nighttime. I have no light depth perception. I can't see how far away a source of light is. I can't determine how far away it is.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing when I'm playing a 3D video game. And yeah, my wife gets real nervous when I drive at night because of it.
Now, when you play, like, okay, let's say you play a 3D platformer,
I try not to.
Yeah, right. Crash 4 added a shadow feature where it's a shadow of Crash and then it has a bright like circle underneath him. Does that help you, or does it not even do anything for you?
It doesn't do anything at all. Yeah, because I can't tell. I can see where I am in space, but I can't tell how far. What?
I was saying, did you not notice your hand fucking gesture there?
No, I didn't.
I swear to God,
I was doing the circle and the guy
between every fucking podcast before we did the 8 episodes and us mentioning 8. Literally after that, now every time is you making some kind of sexual gesture that you're not meaning to. every single time now since like the last fucking Final Fantasy 8 episode, you have just done that somehow in some way.
But this is the character, and this is the shadow, is what I'm getting at, right?
I thought you were gonna say shaft.
This is the shaft, and these are the balls, and you need to cradle the balls and work the shaft. But anyways,
God damn it!
I can see, so I always know like what I'm above, but I don't know how far I am from this platform. You know what I mean? That's what it is. It's not that I don't know where I am in space.
Okay.
It's that I don't know how far anything is from me, if that makes sense. Like when I played, I'm a big Kirby fan. And it's funny because the only like actual 3D Kirby game is the latest one, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, because all the other ones are like 2.5D, like it's in 3D, but you're just side scrolling all the time. But this one had actual like 3D environments. I had to play with my wife, and I would just follow her and press forward because I didn't know where I was in space. Like I didn't know how far I was from things to like land on them and how to approach things. So I would, if it was like fighting enemies, I would deal with it. But if it was like you have to go from here all the way to this thing that's like here, to me, this like and because we're on a screen right now, I honestly cannot see that this hand is further away from me than this hand if I'm looking at the screen.
Really?
Yes. So this looks like it's here. Like right here.
So how do you do?
Because it's on a screen.
Because it's on a screen. So like
Yeah.
in real
It's
life,
it's a flat pane. I cannot tell that this hand, like I can tell because it's a little bit bigger or whatever, right? That it's closer to you.
right?
But because it's on a screen, I can't tell that. To me, this is a flat ass plane right here. This year.
So okay, let me ask you this: like when you do martial arts and stuff, does it affect you then?
No, but if I was doing martial arts with you and you were on a screen, yeah, it would totally. I'd be fucked.
So what about like fighting games where you're on a 3D?
3D fighting games? No, because you're always facing each other. You're always on the same plane. As long as you're
Okay.
on the same plane, it's fine.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I guess that in that respect, it's kind of like it is 3D, but it's kind of a 2D like camera angle.
Yeah. It's just you can cut angles. That's about it, right?
Okay.
But it's not. But that's why like 3D platformers, I'm fucked. And the only ones, like I said, I've probably said it before. The only ones I can play is like Ratchet and Clank because you get that double jump, and basically the only time I can tell is like when I'm like falling off a ledge, and then I can like hop on and correct it.
Okay.
And
I
Spyro
gotcha.
too. Spyro has that like where he's gliding, and then you can do like that little flap to correct it.
Okay. I wasn't sure because I wasn't sure. Like, yeah, I was thinking like Spyro. I didn't know how you could. Yeah, you definitely probably couldn't play a Souls game though, because
It's not until
The
it's
pla-
like literally
the
not
platforming
until I
is-
can see Spyro's feet dipping below the platform that I know, okay, I am not going to make this. Like if I'm jumping this way, I'm fine. But if I'm jumping this way, I'm fucked.
I love how our main topic went from talking about the fucking gaming industry turning everything into a Souls-like to now we just talk about Metroidvanias.
Yeah.
and your horrible fucking vision issues.
Yeah. Another thing though, in regards to the original topic, if you think back, remember when like first person shooters first came out and they just called everything a Doom clone?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that kind of happens when somebody breaks new ground. And I honestly don't think Dark Souls did break new ground, but I think what they did was they made, like I said earlier, they made something that happened in the NES days and the Super NES and Genesis days applicable to a 3D environment for the first time. I think is what they really did. And I think that anytime somebody breaks a genre like that, or like evolves a genre like that, or
They kind of created the subgenre of that type of game. Not necessarily the difficulty aspect, but that type of game where
I feel like they brought that genre back, but in a 3D environment.
right.
And that wasn't, nobody had really done it. You know what I mean? Not to that successful of a degree. Like there's
Right.
probably games out there that exist that nobody's fucking played, but they're, you know what I mean?
hmm
But they popularized it. Just like, I mean, Doom wasn't the first person shooter, but it popularized it. And then all first person shooters were called Doom clones. You look at, there's so many like Zelda clones.
Breath of
Like,
the Wild.
yeah, well, even before that, like you look at, have you ever played like Star Tropics on the NES? Fuck, what's another one that would have been? There were so many like Zelda clones. Knights of Senti on the Genesis is a Zelda clone. Some people would call Secret of Mana's style combat a Zelda clone. You know what I mean? Like that whole it's not a Zelda clone. It's they created a genre or changed a genre, and other companies wanted to make games similar to that, or were like, hey, that's a play style that works for this game I would like to make.
I mean, Zelda games in the original, like the very first Zelda game was kind of just like a dungeon crawler. It wasn't necessarily like anything that hadn't already been there. It just was in a different style.
Yeah, and that's what Dark Souls is. Like the whole Soulsborne is. Well, it's a 3D hack and slash, but it's taking the boss fights that you had, like, it's taking the boss fight style that the classic like 2D platformers had years and years ago that nobody was able to replicate in a 3D environment. It's that extra precision that you need, the extra the memorization, the patterns, the timing. None of that was, you couldn't do it precise enough in a 3D environment, but they figured out how to, and they made it work, and it's treated as its own genre now, right?
Right. And it's amazing to me too, because like I I was like you. I hated these games. I tried Dark Souls 3 on my roommate's PS4 and I fucking hated it. I was like, why is this so hard? What's the point of this? I tried Dark Souls 2. I fucking hated it. Now I know why. But it wasn't until I got Fear of Missing Out with Elden Ring and I bought it at launch and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this game. I'm probably going to hate it. And I even bought Sekiro at launch and I fucking hated it too. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it a chance. Not every company makes games that I like, but I'm going to try this game because I keep hearing great things about it. You know, what people are saying it could be, blah, blah, blah. So I bought it at launch and I was like, holy fuck, it finally clicked. And then when I beat Margit, I was like, I get it now. I get why people like these games, because once I overcame that challenge, it was like my brain was telling me, well, you can do it. Like, you can do this. You just beat Margit. Like, if you can beat Margit, you can beat, you know, Renala. Or you can beat Godric. You know, if you can beat Godric, you can beat Renala. If you can beat Renala, you can beat Radon. Like, you keep playing and you keep playing and you get addicted to it. And you're like, I got to the point, and this is a bragging point for me, and I will always brag about this, and fuck anybody that tries to say this is not an achievement. I beat Melania on my first playthrough of Elden Ring. And I know to you that probably sounds like nothing, because you don't know who Melania is, but anybody watching that's ever played a Dark Souls game, or played a Soulsborne series game at all, is going to know who Melania is, and how hard that fucking fight is. It is considered the hardest fight ever created by From Software. And I beat it on my first ever playthrough of a Souls game. We're talking like over the course of like 14 years, they've been creating boss fights. And she is the very hardest boss in Souls history.
Right.
And on my very first Souls game, I beat her. And I was so fucking stoked, dude. You have no idea the amount of pure fucking joy I felt. That I was reading on online forums that she was impossible. I was reading that people were fucking, that Souls veterans were pissed because they couldn't beat her. You know, I was reading all this shit. Now, granted, she has been nerfed since that time. They have gone in and, you know...
I remember hearing about that, actually.
If the
and it upset a lot of people.
If the community feels that a boss fight is just unfair and too hard, From Software will analyze that fight, and they'll see where people are talking about what points of the fight are too hard, and they will try to course correct on those fights, because sometimes they even realize, like, after people have playtested it, they're like, okay, yeah, this attack is a one-shot in every scenario, we need to change this, or we need to tune this down or a little bit, or even tune it up if it's too easy. Like, they'll tune stuff up if it's too easy.
Yeah.
So Radon was considered one of the hardest bosses in the game. He's optional, but he was considered one of the hardest bosses in the game, right up there with Melania. And they tuned him down because everybody said he was too hard. Well, I beat Radon and Melania before the tune down. And so that was what made me happy, was that I can say I beat Melania before she was nerfed. Now, she is still hard as fuck. Like, there is no question she is still hard as fuck. She is still probably the hardest boss in Souls history to this day, even with the nerf. But what makes her so difficult is not necessarily that her fight is hard. It's that she heals every single time she hits you. So if you get her
soul crushing at that point,
if you get her down to almost nothing and she unleashes Waterfowl Dance and you somehow live through that, which is very lucky if you do, she can bring her health back to almost full.
Jeez, that's awful.
God damn, it is exhilarating when you beat her, though. Because she has 2 phases. So not only do you have to deal with her first phase, which has waterfowl dance, she has a grab that she does, she has, like, a piercing attack that she does. You have to get through all of that with her healing herself, and then she goes goddess mode, which is Melania, goddess of rot, and that's her second phase.
Kind of beast-looking constellation-y thing?
It's the one where she sprouts wings that are made out of poisonous butterflies.
Oh.
And she jumps up into the air to start phase 2. She lands wherever you're standing, but there's a trick, you have to run towards her and under her, and then she'll miss you. And then
she'll come this way and you'll be... Yeah, okay.
And then when she lands, she blooms into this flower, and it just creates scarlet rot everywhere. And if you get scarlet rot, it's basically like a really aggressive form of poison. And it's basically a death sentence. And you have to deal with all that and finish a full health bar from her.
Fuck.
So 2 phases of this shit, right?
Yeah.
I beat it pre-nerf. Probably my proudest gaming accomplishment ever. And that was my first Souls game. So imagine how I felt beating that, and then I'm like, I'm not done yet. And then I went through and beat all of the other games. And I would say the only fight that I think is in comparison to Melania would probably be Ishin Sword Saint from Sekiro. That is the hardest fight, I think, besides Melania I've ever done. And a lot of people say that when you go back to that fight now, it's much easier because once you've beat him, you realize what it takes to beat him.
Right.
And you can go back and do it even easier.
It's like a pattern memorization.
Yeah,
thing.
Sekiro is like I said earlier, Sekiro is a dance. You have to know when to deflect. And it's not like Dark Souls where dodging is your main source of defense. Sekiro actually kind of actively discourages dodging. Because more often than not, you will not be able to dodge better than you can deflect.
Right.
And
that's kind of like Neo. Neo is kind of like that.
Yeah, and so when you play Sekiro, your skill with your blade is what's going to carry you through that game. If you can't master deflecting and parrying and blocking, you will not beat Sekiro. It's impossible. And so it's a skill thing. It's not it's not like Dark Souls or anything like that where you statistically level up. You get these things called prayer beads, and if you get 4 of them, I think it is, you gain more health. Okay. And then every time you beat a major boss, you get I can't think of what it's called. Might be a remembrance, I don't remember. But you take it, and that boosts your attack power.
Oh, okay.
Well, the issue with that is that the game knows what power level you should be and roughly around what health you should be at for that point in the game.
Right.
So your attack increase and your health increase basically is just kind of arbitrary. Like, yes, you need those things to make it better.
But the difficulty increase is expecting you to have them, basically.
Right. The difficulty scales with you as you go. So you're not going to be able to boost your attack power to a point where you're just going to steamroll an area. You are going to come up to a challenge that is at your level because they want you to overcome these challenges. And that's the thing. Miyazaki has said that he doesn't want people to not finish his game. He wants them to learn what overcoming adversity means and what it is. Yeah. And that's why a lot of inspiration came from Berserk for those games, because Guts' whole thing is struggling through adversity, but he finds a way to overcome it and protect those people that he loves.
Right.
And so he falls, he fails, he gets back up, he does it again, he eventually overcomes that adversity and moves on to the next part of his story. Right. And that's exactly what Dark Souls, Elden Ring, Sekiro, Bloodborne, Demon Souls. It's what these games are about. They're not about punishing difficulty. They're not about they're not about game mechanics. They're not about, story. They are about figuring out how to get past obstacles that you would not otherwise be able to get past and doing it yourself. Doing it in a way that teaches you it's okay to fail. It is okay to fail in this video game, just like it's okay to fail in life. But if you get back up and you fight and you live to fight another day, you have that much more of a chance and you know how to better yourself and overcome that adversity.
Yeah, you've learned from your failures.
And that's what these games are about. And a lot of people don't realize that. And I'll admit, I did not understand that that's what these games were about until I played Elden Ring. And I'm like, I get it now. I understand. It clicked. And I don't remember what moment it was that it clicked for me, but there was just something in me that was like, I understand these games now. I know what they take. And I was able to do it. And I think that's another reason why I don't rage at them. I don't rage quit at these games. I understand what it's like. And it's like Jedi Survivor. The final boss fight in that fucking game is so goddamn hard. It's ridiculous. Like, I would put that fight up there with just about any Soulsborne boss out there, other than Melania and Ishin. It's not even close to those two. But I struggled so hard in that fight, it's ridiculous. But once I figured out the key to it, I almost no damaged him in the first 3 phases of his fight. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you learn a boss, so I haven't played Elden Ring in a while. It's been a while since I played it because I've been playing through all the Souls games. I played Lords of the Fallen. I played, several games in between my last playthrough of Elden Ring. I went in and I fought Margit at the level I should be to fight Margit, and I fucking wiped the floor with him.
Oh, nice.
And it's like, because I knew that fight already, but also because I just took from being super inexperienced at Souls-likes to having beat an entire company's library of Souls games, to coming back to Elden Ring, and now I'm like, I just wiped the fucking floor with a boss that filters a lot of people.
Right.
And I just want people to know that are out there, if you want to play a Souls-like, or you don't think you can get past it, or you don't think you can do this, or you don't think you can do that, get that out of your head. You can do it. Because my fucking ass did it. And I am I was not a veteran of those games at all, and I was able to do it. And I think if you go in with the mindset of you're going to die, failure is an option, you're going to be fine, and you're going to overcome it, and you're going to beat it. I believe in you.
I feel like that's how the NES hard was, though, back then. Like, especially when you said...
I don't know, Ninja Gaiden and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was fucking bullshit.
The first Ninja Gaiden, yes, because when you get to the final boss, it kicks you back like 3 full stages, and you have to respawn from there. But if you're like, when you said when you beat that boss, and then you realized, okay, if I could beat this guy, I can do it. That was me when I played like Mega Man on the NES, because with Mega Man, all the bosses are an even playing field, right? You select what stage you play first. You can play them in any order. So it's not like this boss is harder than this boss. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until when I was a kid, it wasn't until I had beaten like my first boss or my first 2 robot masters where I was like, okay, well, if I can beat this guy, there's no reason at all why I can't beat all the other robot masters. And if I can beat all 6 robot masters, there's no reason I can't beat this game. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's the thrill of the challenge and the hype of overcoming the challenge. And that's why I love like 2D action platformers for back then.
And the cool thing is too, like, you don't understand, like, you don't realize, it's almost like it unlocked something in my brain when it comes to video games that I now appreciate more than I ever did. And that's beating a good game.
And that's the thing. It's the quality of the game too. There's hard, there's challenging, but then there's challenging and hard because it's not good. It's not tight. You know what I mean? It's got to be tight.
Yeah, and I like when I beat Elden Ring, I understood that like I wanted to start playing games on harder difficulties.
Right.
Because it was like I almost knocked that off. I wanted to play games on harder difficulties. So I would have never played Jedi Survivor on Grandmaster if I had not beaten those games already. If I didn't understand what it took to beat Grandmaster, I wouldn't have wanted to play it because it was like, to me, the extent of like hard games for me was like playing on normal.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, that's just my standard difficulty. That's what I play on. That's what I've always enjoyed. And then it made me realize that I wasn't getting the enjoyment out of games that I thought I was. Because I started going back and playing games on harder difficulties, and I'm like, this is a much better game than I remember. And I'm like, what is it that is causing me to feel this way? And then I realized it's because my brain was being stimulated. Yeah. I was getting something from these games that I wasn't getting before. And it's like Elden Ring unlocked that.
Yeah.
So when I went to play the other Souls games, I'm like, fuck, these are good games. Like, why was I sleeping on these? And then like anytime I play a game, like, okay, I was playing Super Mario Brothers Wonder the other day, and it has like difficulty ratings on each level. So like there's like 1 star to 4 stars is your standard, like 1 to 4 star difficulty. And then I think there's some that are like 5-star difficulty, and they're extremely difficult, but they're like special levels. They're not like required, if I remember right.
Like bonus stages or something. Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to find every 5-star level and beat it.
Yeah.
And before, I would have just done the bare minimum to beat a game and moved on to the next game.
Yeah.
And I don't do that anymore. I look for the challenge now, and I never used to do that before. And it's like, you know, that's why I'm excited for Dragon Quest Monsters, because the game was fucking hard. If it's as hard as people say it is, I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
And like Baldur's Gate 3, everybody's like, oh man, the fights are hard. I don't know if I really care for this, you know, and it's a turn-based game. So it's like, okay, well, you know, it's going to be hard because there's a lot of hard turn-based games out there, but can it really be that hard? And then I play it and I'm like, fuck, this game is kind of hard. Yeah. I lose an encounter and I'm like, okay, well, I know now that this enemy starts here.
Yeah.
He usually moves to here, so I need to set up attacks that will land there when he gets there so that my turn is set up to destroy that enemy.
Yeah, you can prepare based on your knowledge from the previous encounter.
Right. And I never felt cheated. Now, the only thing that I didn't really care for in Baldur's Gate 3 when it came to difficulty was that I would do an encounter and lose. But I would be like 15 turns into that encounter. And in Baldur's Gate 3, 15 turns is kind of a long time. Like, especially if it's a large-scale battle, because every single unit has to take a turn.
For 1 turn.
So it goes through all the turn order. And let's say that, like, your 4 characters are in the turn order at the very beginning, and there's 20 enemies that you have to fight. Well, not only do you have to do your turn, but now all 20 of those enemies have to move.
Yeah.
They have to do their action. Some will do a bonus action. Some will move extra spaces after their bonus action. You know, some will heal. Some will do long scale animations. Like, there is a lot that goes on with enemies that isn't just your party interacting with those enemies. Yeah. And that's where I kind of got a little pissed, because I'd be like, I'd be at the end.
It's just time sink.
It's a lot of time. Like, one battle could take.
That's my only gripe with like tactical RPGs. Like, I love tactical RPGs, but I also hate tactical RPGs because in fucking a regular JRPG, a battle lasts like 5 seconds. In a tactical RPG, it can last 25 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, that's my thing. Yeah. And as far as you're like, it's kind of funny because we're almost the opposite now in terms of the difficulty thing. I don't play games on easy, but I mean I have, but I used to play games on hard, But now I feel like I do not have the time to play games on hard. I can
Right.
still enjoy them on normal or easy. But there was a time I used to be, and honestly, streaming is what honestly helped me with this so much, because I used to be a completionist. I would have to have all the, like, not every item, but if it was like a trackable item in a game, I had to have every item. I had to hit the level cap. I had to, like, it was like insane what like I had to do. And so, for example, like Metal Gear Solid 3, I had to beat that game on European Extreme. I had to have every type of camo. I had to get all the frogs, like the little frog guys that you shoot.
Mhm.
I had to do all that. Like, I used to be like that when I played Twilight Princess. I don't even fucking like Zelda, dude. I had every heart piece in
Yep.
Twilight Princess. I had every item. If I had I don't know if you ever played Rogue Galaxy, but there's these things called the 7-star swords,
Mhm.
and I had to have all 7 of them. Like, if there's an inventory screen and there's like spaces for these items and there's a hole there, I could not like
I
live.
feel you, because when I played Ghost of Tsushima, um you unlock like parts of the map, and then there'll be like question marks, and then there'll be like
Oh, I get bad for
other
that
stuff,
with Western
and
RPGs. That's
and
why I
it
can't
and
play them.
it's kind of an open world game. Well, it is an open world game, but it's an open world game, and you see like a question mark on the thing, and you're like, "What's that? I gotta have
Yeah.
that." And then an hour later, you're like, what was I doing in the main story again?"
Yeah,
Spider-Man's the same way. If I know that there's a collectible in the Spider-Man games, so this'll tell you, I've platinumed every Insomniac Spider-Man game that they've made, and even went back and platinumed the remaster when it came out. So I've platinumed 4 Spider-Man games from Insomniac, right?
and they only made 3.
And they only made 3. So I've platinumed all 4 of the games they've made, and I did so because there'd be like an enemy bunker you have to complete, and I'd be like, okay, let me complete that, and then I would wait to start the story back up once I got everything cleared. Well, then you get to a certain part in the story.
Yeah, I know. You cover an inch of story, and then all this extra
Right.
stuff opens up.
So I finish all that up. Then I get like, I don't know, a couple hours into the story, and you unlock like these robots you have to go destroy. So then I go and clear out the robots. Well, then a couple hours into the story, you unlock the bunkers. And then a couple hours later, you unlock like these research facilities where you have to do science experiments. And then, you have to clear all those out. And then there's side quests that pop up you have to clear out and everything else. And I'm like, I have to complete all these because it goes towards the platinum, but also because my brain is telling me you have to do this.
Yeah.
So I feel
the worst part. So when I started streaming, I was like, okay, I don't want to play the same game for the rest of my life, right? And that's what helped me with that, was like, I would be like, okay, we're just gonna play the story. If there's any side content that I want to get, I'll get it. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and like 1, 2, and 3, I did fall into that, where I was like, oh, there's a thing over there. We're gonna spend 12.
Yeah.
We're gonna do a fucking 8-hour stream and accidentally not do any story whatsoever. That happened a lot when I was playing the Xenoblade games, and I loved every minute of it. But when it came to the worst part for me is that when I was the completionist guy, it was before platinums existed. So what killed me was when they remastered Rogue Galaxy on I think it was PS4, and they added trophies, and I was like, dude, I did all of this. It took me 300 hours to do all this on the PS2. I'm not fucking doing it all again, kind of thing, right? But I did do it again for Metal Gear Solid 3. I went and did everything again in Metal Gear Solid 3.
So, and that's what it's going to sound stupid, but this is why I have a hard time playing on my Switch anymore.
Yeah, because you don't get like credit for it.
Yeah, because they're
weird
like,
as it sounds.
Yeah, it sounds weird because you would think the credit you would need would be that you completed the game, but as soon as I started like trophy hunting certain games, it almost became like a thing. Like, so I'm playing Elden Ring right now on PS5. All of my other 5 playthroughs have been on Steam. but I want to get the
Right.
platinum for Elden Ring. So now I'm replaying it on PS5 and going through and getting the platinum. And
Yeah.
so it's funny because like I platinumed like Spyro the Dragon 1 when the remaster came out. And
Right.
I had already done the 100 and because I think you unlock the secret area, you finish it. I think it pushes your completion percentage like 106 or something like that.
I can't remember for that one.
And so I wanted to do it again. Well, that unlocks the platinum. So I did the platinum technically twice for Spyro. Once on the PS1, which didn't have the trophy, and then once on PS4.
Yeah. So Ripto's Rage. I had like over 100%ed Ripto's Rage back on the PS1. Like that's what I mean. Like all those games back then, I was just like that. I never did any of that in the remasters because I can't bring myself to do that anymore. But fuck, I was gonna say something and then I can't remember what it was. Fuck, I don't remember what it was. Oh, I do want to say with Dragon Quest Monsters, the Dark Prince, the first like 2 bosses are easy, and then you'll hit a wall kind of thing. Just so you're not expecting the difficulty to be like easy. Although I did grind a lot at the start, and I had my monsters from the demo that I carried forward to the full game, so I had a bit of a head start. I did want to ask when it what are your thoughts when it does come to one hit kill attacks in games? When is it okay and when isn't it?
So I don't think it's okay when like they make it super 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 hard to dodge or to avoid. I think it's okay as like if you get to a point in the boss fight where like the boss is in desperation mode.
Yeah.
I think it's okay then because like in a real fight when someone is in that desperation mode, they're going to throw everything they have in the tank left because they either need to survive or they want to finish the fight.
Yeah.
And so to me, like, okay, there's an attack that King Allant does at the end of Demon Souls, and it actually drains a soul level from you. It's an easily avoidable attack, but if you get grabbed, you lose a level.
Oh, okay.
Now that's not a desperation move for him, but if it was, I would be okay with that because like that's his last ditch effort to kill you.
Right.
Melania, I don't necessarily like her waterfowl dance attack.
Right.
But it is dodgeable. It's just very difficult to dodge. And
you have to like figure it out or know beforehand how to dodge it too, it seems like with that one.
I don't know. I feel like it's hard because I'm not a game developer, but I feel like it just needs to be a balanced attack. And I don't think that like the boss's very first attack of the fight should be a one-hit shot. And if if it hits you, like you're dead at the very beginning of the fight, because then it makes like
I feel like it's better to happen at the beginning than like after a long battle, though. To be honest.
That's fair, I guess. The other time, I think like I don't know. Sometimes it's almost more annoying when a boss takes you down to 1 HP.
Yeah,
like I think
sometimes that's exciting though.
Is it Omega or Ultimate Weapon in 8? That has that attack that takes all of your characters down to 1 HP. Weapon. Yeah. I almost don't like that because it feels cheap. Almost like it's
there was I keep remembering the thing I'm gonna fucking ask you and then forgetting when I go to say it. But for me, I like when it comes to one-hit kills. I pretty much only like them in JRPGs, like turn-based JRPGs. And I love the rollback to 1. I love that shit. Like Necron in Final Fantasy 9, Zeromus in Final Fantasy 4.
Ozma does it too, doesn't she?
Yeah, Ozma does it. Yeah. Like I love that shit. It's kind of weird. And I think it's just because I grew up playing like Final Fantasy IV and stuff like that. But I love when you're fighting a really hard boss, be it a final boss or a super boss, and that boss, if he chooses to, he can wipe your party. I don't know what it is. I don't think you guys have to like it, but for some reason I like it. Like if this boss has a move that will party wipe you and he chooses to use that, like I think that's okay in a JRPG.
I also don't mind Pokemon's handling of one-hit kills. As it
fucking Beetle.
As in, like, so Fisher, Horn Drill, stuff like that. It's a very low chance to hit, but if it does, it's an instant KO. Like,
Yeah,
I don't mind that. Where
those
like,
ones pucker my butthole because that's scary.
Dude, I know.
Yeah. Because there's a difference between he's using the move and it might work, and he might use this move, and if he does, you're fucked. Right. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and stuff like Horn Drill, stuff like that, very low chance to hit.
Yeah.
So it might be used 10 times and it only hits once, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It just depends. In action games, I'm like, about it.
I don't like it.
I would rather it be a desperation move and not
that's what I was gonna say. So I don't like desperation moves unless they're very easily avoidable after you've been hit with it once. If that makes sense.
Right.
Like, so have you ever played Sonic Adventure?
No.
So Sonic Adventure, when you play through Sonic's story and you beat Robotnik or Eggman at the very end of his first story, it's a hard fucking boss fight because the controls are a little bit jank and you're on these like narrow platforms, blah blah blah. Anyways, you beat him and they're like characters are celebrating and he's in like this giant like robot snake thing and it's like going like this across the background and it's on fire, like it's exploding. And then the whole tail breaks off and you're on these platforms, but the platforms are destructible. Or it's not a platform, you're on a bridge and the sections of the bridge are destructible. And anyways, all of a sudden from the bottom of the screen, like he fell, right? So you're like, I beat the game, whatever, right? And all of a sudden from the bottom of the screen, he comes up and lands on the square. And if you're on the square that you were on when he was like right here, you're fucking dead and you have to redo the entire boss fight again. And it's hard to dodge because the timing is weird and the controls are a little bit jank. And that fucking part pisses me off so much. Like if it happened and the next time it happened, I could easily be like, okay, he's coming, now I move and I'm fine. Mm-hmm. I would be okay with it. But because it's so hard to get out of the way and time it, it's so fucking annoying.
So I guess one thing, the reason why it doesn't necessarily bother me in Souls games is because like a lot of bosses in Souls have phases, and depending on, so like Sekiro phases work because the boss has a health pool, and unlike Souls games where they have just one health bar and they're done, Sekiro bosses have multiple health bars.
Right.
And that's how you signify the phase change.
Yeah.
So like, let's say I'm fighting Genichiro in Sekiro, and I get down his first 2 bars, I think it is. There's a scene that plays, and he like sort of dies, I guess. I don't remember. It's been a while since I played Sekiro, but he kind of dies, sort of. But the rejuvenating waters kick in, and then he like gains the ability to use lightning in his 3rd phase. And so the first 2 phases, he didn't have that lightning ability. So it kind of gives you like a heads up when the phase is going to change, to where the boss might use different mechanics.
I love that in boss fights, like even in like 2D action platformers. When you're the more you beat up the boss, the more like fucking things they start throwing at you, and they change up their patterns and stuff. Right. I love that.
So Dark Souls does it too, or like Elden Ring and stuff. Like you might be fighting a boss, and a third or like maybe halfway down their health bar, they start using different attacks, or they start they start gaining abilities that they didn't have, or like not necessarily that they didn't have, but they just didn't use, because like it almost feels like an Elden Ring. Bosses underestimate you until you do enough damage to them,
and then they start taking you seriously.
And then
like,
yeah,
right?
it feels like they start taking you seriously. You're not a joke to them.
Yeah.
And then like you'll have bosses in Elden Ring that make fun of other bosses for losing to you.
Oh, that's funny.
Or like losing in general. Like Godric he calls himself the Lord of all that is golden in Elden Ring, but he lost to Melania. And then like other characters in the game make fun of Godric for being weak and being like a weasel or like just whatever. And Godric's like this huge dude. He's got like, they call him Godric the Grafted because he's grafted body parts onto himself to make himself stronger and make himself bigger. And then there's a part where he cuts off his own hand and he takes a dragon head and he attaches it to his stump, and then he can use flame attacks in his second phase. And because he like grafted himself and he looks like a freak and everything else, like they make fun of him for it. And so it's really cool. Not necessarily bosses, I guess, make fun of him, but in the lore of the game, they make fun of him. The bosses do, kinda. And then there's NPCs that make fun of him because they say like, oh, he's weak, or he lost to Melania and then he cowered to his castle and all this other stuff. And then when you fight him, you're like, oh shit, this guy's kind of fucking hard.
Yeah.
And then when you beat him, like there's an NPC, if you meet this NPC when you're playing, he's the gatekeeper actually. If you meet him and you beat Godric, if you reset the area and you go back to Godric's boss arena, Godric's like head and part of his torso is still there on the ground, and the NPC is stomping on his head. And he's like,
really?
He's like, you no longer control me. You're weak. Blah blah blah. You know, just the guy. He's shit talking a dead body. Basically, is what he's doing.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just funny to me that like they don't take you seriously until you beat them, and then like all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'm down to like a half health, or I'm down to a fourth of my health left. And this guy's fucking serious. Time to break out the fucking holy hammer, or the flame-breathing dragon on my arm, or
the
fucking
big guns.
Or I become a fucking literal goddess of rot, and like time to fuck you up because I didn't take you seriously in my first phase, and now all of a sudden the shit just got fucking real.
I love that. Even I love it in like action like 2D action platformers, and even like some JRPGs do that too. When you're like what fucking game? Oh, when I beat the post game super boss in Dragon Quest IV remake, my buddy Faith, because I had never beaten this guy, right? Like the last time I tried, I got wasted, and he was like, my buddy Faith was like, when he starts using Magic Burst, it means you've almost got him. But Magic Burst will like drop everybody in your party's health down like super, super low. And so when he started using that, I was like, fuck yeah, we've got him on the ropes. And it's just, I love that feeling. And I love getting knocked down to 1 HP. That beetle is pissing me off. I love getting knocked down to 1 HP because it makes me like, because sometimes when you're fighting a boss in a JRPG, you're like, okay, buff, attack, heal. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, you could be doing damage. All of a sudden now, you're making no progress. You are scurrying to stay alive before you can make any progress on this boss. I don't know what it is. I just love that. Well, but I finally wrote down what my things were that I wanted to bring up. An important thing is, and you kind of mentioned it when you said something about like the games being good. Like when it comes to a challenge, it's okay when the games are good. It's the fact that you have to have trust in the developers. It has to come. You have to have played a game that they made and enjoyed it, despite it being very difficult. And have trust that they make a good game, a game that's going to be challenging but fair. And it's that trust in the developers that lets you know that you can come back for more too. That's one thing I definitely wanted to say.
Well, that's the thing. Like when Armored Core 6 came out, I was expecting like a really punishingly hard game with mechs. Now, it
Right.
didn't meet that criteria for me because I beat it in like 2 days, I think, and it just wasn't as hard as I was expecting. Like, I guess I was expecting Souls with mechs, but it's not really that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, anything From Software comes out with now that is in line with the Souls series, I will pick up because I have beaten all of them now, and I see what they are, and I see what they're meant to do, and I see the quality that Miyazaki puts in his games, and now I'm going to be a lifelong adopter of anything he puts out because I trust him to make an experience I will enjoy.
Exactly. It's absolutely trust. And then the other thing I wanted to say was a lot of, especially like kids nowadays, because a lot of kids, the only games they're playing are piss easy, or can you even call them a games like Roblox and stuff like that, right? Like Minecraft, and I don't know, like games that, do they even count as games at this point, right? And I had my niece over, and she's like that age group. She's like, I think like 11 or 12 years old, where unfortunately all they play are games that, good job, you made it to the end and there's no enemies here, but you made it to the end. Like, you know what I mean? Like those kinds of games. And when faced with adversity, if it's a game that she likes a little bit and she's faced with adversity, she will just quit. If it's hard, if it's too hard, she will quit. All right. I had her over. We played through all of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 one weekend, and she just fucking loved it, right? Like it's a really well made game. And the way the co-op works is nice because player 2 can die over and over again. It doesn't really matter. But they help out a lot with player 1. And Sonic 2 can get really tough, and so can Sonic 3. We played through Sonic 3 and Knuckles. We got all the way to the final boss. And I'm talking like full blown master emeralds. Like we had all the chaos emeralds, we had everything unlocked. So we were fighting the ultimate true final boss fight, right? We died probably 15 to 20 times on the final boss, and she did not give up. And that is that trust, right? We played through Sonic 2. It took us the whole day one weekend. We got through it, we beat it, and she absolutely loved it. We played Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which is way, like, probably 3 times longer. And we did it all in one sitting. And this is like, if it were any of the other games that she played where she died twice, maybe she would have quit, right? But because of the quality of the game, amount she was invested in this game, because of like the time we spent together playing it, the amount of fun she had up to this point, and it was like, it's so hard that I don't know if you've ever played Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but that final boss fight where you're running on that platform and he's shooting that laser, and if you get hit with it, you don't have any rings in these. There's like a 3 sequence boss fight. You have no rings. If you get hit once, it's back to phase 1. And we would get to like phase 2 over and over again and die. And it was just like that determination and the excitement that she felt when we finally beat it is like, I know she had never felt that before in a video game. And it was just like, that was when you felt that in Elden Ring, and when I felt that in like Mega Man 2 or whatever when I was a kid the first time. It was just so cool to witness that in a modern day kid, because they don't really get that anymore. And it was just like, she was just so excited, and it was just so awesome because every time there was like another form, she was just like, oh, he's got another form. And it was like that was like us, right? Like, because we're so used to that.
It
But
was
when
like Gohan fighting Frieza.
yeah, like me and you though, when we're playing like JRPGs or games that we play, we're used to that. But when you grow up and all you play is Roblox and Fortnite, that's not something you ever experience, right? So it was just so awesome to like witness that, and she was just like glowing when the credits started to roll, right?
So let me ask you this: do you think her experience was because the trust in the developers, or do you think it was the trust in her and you? Because like because you were there and she knew that it was a game that you'd beaten before, it was a game that you'd played a lot, she had that confidence in you that even if she failed, you would be able to succeed, and she could like play with you, she could be part of your success, she could, you know what I mean? Do you think it was because for her, she's probably not at an age where she can appreciate that Sega put out Sonic? Like, you know what I mean? She's not going to know that every Sonic game
is good.
It is not quality up to Sonic 2 and Sonic 3's quality.
Right.
Like, if she goes to play another Sonic game with you, like one of the 3D Sonic games, there's a good chance she's not going to enjoy herself because that just wasn't,
it wasn't
a good game or whatever. But because she was playing with you, she had that trust in you that she knew everything was going to be okay. You weren't going to get mad at her for losing. You weren't going to you weren't going to fail because she failed. Like, it was that safety blanket that she had to play the game with you and just have fun.
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that, actually, because otherwise I wouldn't have mentioned this. I made her fight the final boss by herself. All I had to do was survive. She had to fight the boss. It was, she did it. Like, so there was definitely the trust that she knew I had beaten it, but she also, like, looks up to me like any game that, like, if she's played it and I've played it, I'd beaten it, right? Or if she's played it and her dad's played it, I've beaten it. Like, so she knows, like, I'm not gonna say I'm like this great fucking gamer, but like I'm better than like regular people at video games. You know what I mean? But when we got to that final boss sequence, I said, all I'm gonna do is survive. You are going to you have to beat this boss for us. And she was like, okay. Like, she was very hesitant at first. The first two times we got to the second phase, we died like immediately. And then after that, it was like, she was like, realized like, I don't know if it's like she realized like I believed that she could do it, or if it was like she knew like the game was good all the way up to this point, so it's not like it's gonna let her down, right? So there's that trust in the developer. There's the fact that we've made it this far, we're one step away from the end, and I don't know, maybe she thought I believed that she could do it, but it was just crazy because I made her do that final boss fight, and all I did was survive. And it was just like, for her to do that was like just incredible.
That's pretty cool, man. That's a cool way to get the next generation into everything. I'm excited to do stuff with like, so Super Mario RPG came out and I beat the fuck out of that game. I absolutely love it. But it's an RPG that is easy enough that my son, when he gets old enough to play video games, I can introduce him to RPGs with that game. It's going to have bright colors and be, it's a Mario game, so obviously kids are going to enjoy that kind of thing.
And it's not super long.
Not super long.
The story's not super deep. Like, you know what I mean?
And
like
it's an interactive game too, because you have to time your button presses and everything else. Like, it's an attention grabber, and I think that's going to be cool for him when he gets older and can play games and stuff, that I can show him that. And it's cool that you can take your love of Sonic and give that to the next generation as well.
Yeah. And get her to experience like a quality game from back, like when they made games. Well, they still make games like to that quality, but kids these days just don't play those kinds of games for the most part. So, yeah.
But, well, it is damn near 3 hours later when we started this episode.
This was a good episode. Considering we had no idea what the episode was going to be about 3 hours before we started.
Shit, fucking 20 minutes before we started. Yeah, we had no idea what we were going to talk about today. And even the main topic that we did want to talk about, we kind of just went off on a it was related tangent, but not like super fucking, whatever. There wasn't really much to say about the main topic other than please stop fucking calling every hard game a Souls-like, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
And every game with numbers an RPG, like, come on.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, thank you all for watching / listening for this entire fucking whatever the hell this was for 3 hours.
Marathon.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you for all the plays and everything and all the views. It's been pretty awesome having a podcast again and just talking random bullshit with my friend. Don't forget to catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, SoundCloud for now, and YouTube. Really appreciate you guys watching, and I think that's about it. You got anything to add?
No way, man. Have a good one, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Always glad to have you. And yeah, tell us your gamer rage moments in the comments.
Or if you've played any of the games that we have talked about tonight,
yeah,
feel free to
tell us about your experiences.
Yeah, tell us your stories about these games. So anyway, guys, this has been episode 13 of The Gaming Effect. We might call this episode The Dark Souls Effect, for all I fucking know. I don't know. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I'm your co-host, Alex, a.k.a. Soldier First Class.
I am Corey, a.k.a. Dookie03.
I'm glad you practiced that. And that's it. Catch you later, guys.
Have a good one.